The galaxy trembled under the weight of the First Great War, a conflict so devastating that even 65 million years later, its echoes still reverberate through the void. During the War in Heaven, when the ancient Catan and their Necron servants sought to harvest all life from the stars, the Old Ones faced extinction alongside every other living creature in the galaxy. These masters of the warp, beings of such psychic potency that they could reshape reality itself, understood that conventional warfare would not suffice against an enemy that had turned death into a weapon and enslaved entire species to their will. In their desperation, the Old Ones turned to biological warfare on a scale never before attempted. They began crafting living weapons, entire species designed from the ground up to wage war against the star-consuming Catan. Among their greatest creations were the Krork, a warrior race engineered to be the perfect soldiers. These beings stood 12 feet tall, their massive frames encased in sophisticated bio-armor that responded to their thoughts. Their weapons were not crude implements, but living extensions of their will, capable of adapting to any battlefield condition. The Krork possessed an innate understanding of warfare that went beyond instinct, approaching something closer to genetic memory encoded in their very DNA. The Krork were not merely brutish fighters, but sophisticated military organisms. They understood complex tactics, operated advanced technology that seemed to respond to their psychic emanations, and could coordinate massive campaigns across multiple star systems. Their society was rigidly hierarchical, with the largest and most psychically potent individuals naturally rising to command positions. These war bosses could direct millions of their kind with telepathic efficiency, creating armies that moved with a unity of purpose that terrified even the emotionless Necrons. What made the Krork truly dangerous was their method of reproduction and propagation. Rather than relying on traditional biological processes, they released spores when injured or killed. These microscopic organisms could survive in the vacuum of space, extreme temperatures, and radiation levels that would sterilize most worlds. Once they found suitable conditions, the spores would germinate and begin the complex process of creating not just new Krork, but an entire ecosystem designed to support their war efforts. The spores did not create a single species, but rather a symbiotic collective of organisms, each fulfilling specific roles in the greater war machine. The largest and most intelligent of these organisms were the Krork themselves, but they were supported by smaller subspecies that handled logistics, maintenance, and support functions. This biological pyramid ensured that wherever Krork spores took root, a fully functional military infrastructure would inevitably emerge. During the height of the War in Heaven, Krork armies swept across the galaxy like a green tide, their bioships carrying spores to countless worlds. They established beachheads on planets throughout the galactic spiral arms, creating fortress worlds that could sustain prolonged sieges against Necron forces. The Krork's ability to rapidly adapt their technology and tactics made them one of the few forces capable of standing against the Catan's harvest fleets. However, the War in Heaven exacted a terrible price from all participants. The Old Ones, despite their psychic mastery, could not sustain the massive expenditure of energy required to maintain their biological weapons while simultaneously fighting a war across multiple dimensions. As their civilization crumbled under the relentless assault of the Catan, the psychic networks that bound their creations began to weaken and fail. The Krork, deprived of their creator's guiding influence, began to change. Without the Old Ones' psychic oversight, the genetic programming that maintained their sophisticated society started to degrade. The complex neural pathways that allowed for advanced reasoning and strategic thinking simplified, becoming more primitive with each generation. The bio-armor that had once responded to their thoughts became crude metal plates hammered into basic shapes. Their living weapons devolved into simple projectile launchers that seemed to function more on belief than engineering principles. This devolution was not immediate, but occurred over millions of years as the Krork spread across the galaxy. Cut off from their original purpose and the psychic infrastructure that had supported their advanced civilization, they gradually became something else entirely. The proud warrior scientists became the Orks, retaining their love of warfare and their incredible resilience, but losing much of their sophistication and strategic acumen. The transformation was not uniform across all populations. Some groups of Krork maintained higher levels of organization and technology for longer periods, particularly those that remained on worlds with strong psychic resonances or unusual environmental conditions. However, the general trend was towards simplification and devolution, as the complex genetic structures created by the old ones slowly unwound without proper maintenance. Modern Orks retain many characteristics of their Krork ancestors, but in degraded forms. They still grow larger and more intelligent as they age and fight, though they rarely reach the massive proportions of their forebears. Their technology still responds to their psychic emanations, but in a crude and unpredictable manner that often defies Imperial understanding. Most importantly, they retain the spore-based reproductive system that makes them one of the most persistent threats in the galaxy. The Ork ecosystem that emerges from spore infestation is a marvel of biological engineering, even in its devolved state. The spores themselves are incredibly hardy, capable of remaining dormant for centuries in hostile environments before activating when conditions become favorable. They can survive in the void of space, buried deep underground, or even within the digestive systems of other creatures, waiting for the right moment to begin their growth cycle. When spores find suitable conditions, they begin a complex germination process that creates multiple species simultaneously. The process starts with the smallest organisms, snotlings, which are barely intelligent creatures about the size of a human child. These diminutive beings serve as the foundation of the ecosystem, breaking down organic matter and preparing the environment for larger organisms. They cultivate fungal gardens that provide food and raw materials for the growing Ork population. As the ecosystem develops, it produces Gretchen, small humanoid creatures that serve as laborers and servants to the larger Orks. Gretchen possess enough intelligence to operate simple machinery and follow basic orders, making them invaluable for maintaining the crude technology that Orks depend upon. They handle much of the day-to-day work that keeps Ork society functioning, from ammunition production to vehicle maintenance. The ecosystem also produces squigs, a diverse family of creatures that serve various purposes within Ork society. These organisms range from tiny parasites to massive beasts the size of battle tanks. Some squigs are cultivated as food sources, their rapid reproduction and hardy constitution making them ideal livestock for a nomadic warrior culture. Others serve as living weapons, their natural aggression and sharp teeth making them effective in close combat. The largest squigs can be trained as mounts or even living siege engines, their thick hides providing protection while their massive jaws can crush through armor plating. This symbiotic relationship extends beyond simple utility. The various species within the Ork ecosystem share a psychic connection that allows them to function as a unified organism when necessary. Gretchen instinctively understand what their Ork masters need, often anticipating orders before they are given. Squigs respond to Ork emotions, becoming more aggressive when their handlers are excited for battle. Even the humble snotlings play their part, their simple minds contributing to the collective psychic field that makes Ork technology function. The spore distribution system ensures that this ecosystem can establish itself virtually anywhere in the galaxy. When Orks engage in combat, they inevitably release spores through wounds, death, and even normal biological processes. These spores contaminate everything they touch, from soil and water to the hulls of spacecraft and the armor of their enemies. Imperial forces have discovered spores embedded in the ceramite plating of space marine armor after battles with Ork forces, carried unknowingly to distant worlds where they eventually germinate. The persistence of Ork spores makes complete eradication of an Ork infestation nearly impossible. Even after successful military campaigns that eliminate all visible Ork presence from a world, spores can remain dormant in the ecosystem for decades or even centuries. Environmental changes, such as increased temperature or the introduction of new organic matter, can trigger mass germination events that see new Ork populations emerging seemingly from nowhere. Imperial exterminatus protocols exist partly because of this spore contamination problem. Worlds that have been heavily infested with Ork spores sometimes require complete sterilization to prevent future outbreaks. Even then, success is not guaranteed, as spores have been known to survive in deep underground caverns or sealed bunkers, protected from the planet-killing weapons deployed against them. The adaptability of orc spores allows them to thrive in environments that would be hostile to most other forms of life. They have been found growing in the toxic atmospheres of hive world undercities, the radiation-soaked wastelands of former battlefields, and even the vacuum-exposed surfaces of asteroids. This versatility means that virtually any world in the galaxy could potentially support an orc ecosystem, given sufficient time and the right triggering conditions. The degradation from Krork to orc involved more than just physical and technological regression. The most profound change occurred in how these creatures interact with the fundamental forces of reality itself. Where the ancient Krork possessed sophisticated psychic abilities that operated through disciplined mental frameworks established by the old ones, modern orcs generate psychic phenomena through an entirely different mechanism that defies conventional understanding of how the warp functions. The orc psyche operates on a collective level that transcends individual consciousness. Every orc contributes to a Gestalt Psychic Field that grows exponentially stronger as more greenskins gather together. This field does not require trained psychers or complex rituals to manifest its effects. Instead, it responds directly to the collective beliefs and expectations of the orc population, translating their crude understanding of how things should work into actual changes in physical reality. Imperial tech priests have documented countless examples of orc technology that functions despite violating fundamental principles of engineering and physics. Orc vehicles with no visible fuel source continue operating for months during extended campaigns. Weapons with barrels that should burst from internal pressure fire projectiles with devastating accuracy. Most famously, red-painted vehicles consistently demonstrate superior speed compared to identical machines painted in other colors, despite no mechanical modifications to their engines or drive systems. The phenomenon extends far beyond simple mechanical improvements. Orc weapons that appear to be nothing more than scrap metal welded together can punch through ceramite armor that would resist Law's cannon fire. Their crude explosives detonate with force that should require sophisticated chemical compounds, yet analysis reveals they contain little more than industrial solvents and recycled promethium. The projectiles fired from their guns often consist of random debris, yet they impact targets with the force and penetration of properly manufactured ammunition. This psychic reinforcement operates through what Imperial scholars term collective expectation manifestation. When enough orcs believe that something should work in a particular way, the Gestalt field makes it work that way, regardless of physical limitations. The more orcs present, the stronger this effect becomes, creating a feedback loop where larger gatherings of greenskins can achieve increasingly impossible feats through sheer collective belief. The red paint phenomenon represents one of the most studied examples of this psychic reinforcement. Orc mechanics, known as mechboys, universally believe that red vehicles move faster than those painted in other colors. This belief has no basis in mechanical reality, as the paint adds no performance modifications to engines or drive systems. However, Imperial forces have consistently observed that red orc vehicles do indeed move faster than their differently colored counterparts, sometimes achieving speeds that should tear their crude construction apart. Mechboys demonstrate other examples of belief-driven functionality in their work. They install components that serve no apparent mechanical purpose, yet somehow improve their machine's performance. Exhaust pipes shaped like screaming faces make engines run louder and more aggressively. Weapons decorated with jagged teeth patterns inflict more gruesome wounds. Vehicle hulls covered in spikes and horns prove more resistant to enemy fire, despite the decorations adding no actual armor thickness. The Gestalt field also affects orc biology directly. Orcs fighting alongside large numbers of their kind display enhanced strength, resilience, and combat effectiveness compared to isolated individuals. Their wounds heal faster when surrounded by other greenskins who expect them to recover quickly. Their reflexes sharpen when fighting in groups that believe they are superior warriors. Even their crude surgical procedures, which would kill most other species, succeed when performed by painboys who are absolutely confident in their methods. weird boys serve as the most dramatic conduits for this collective psychic energy. These unfortunate orcs possess natural psychic sensitivity that makes them living lightning rods for Wa energy. Unlike human psychers who learn to channel warp energy through disciplined training, weird boys have no control over the forces flowing through them. They absorb the psychic emanations of nearby orcs whether they want to or not, building up dangerous levels of energy that must be released or risk catastrophic consequences. The life of a weird boy is one of constant torment and unpredictability. They can sense the emotional state of every orc within several kilometers, feeling their bloodlust, excitement, and aggression as physical sensations. During the build-up to major battles, when thousands of orcs are preparing for combat, weird boys experience overwhelming psychic pressure that manifests as severe headaches, uncontrolled muscle spasms, and spontaneous electrical discharges from their bodies. Young weird boys often die from psychic overload before learning to manage their abilities. Their heads literally explode from the pressure of accumulated Wa energy, spraying green gore across anyone unfortunate enough to be nearby. Those who survive these early episodes develop crude techniques for releasing excess energy, usually involving spectacular displays of destructive power that can level buildings or incinerate entire enemy squads. Experienced weird boys learn to recognize the warning signs of impending psychic overload. Their eyes begin glowing with green energy, sparks dance across their skin, and nearby electronic equipment starts malfunctioning from the electromagnetic interference they generate. Smart weird boys position themselves where they can unleash their accumulated energy against enemy targets rather than risk harming their own forces, though this is not always possible given the unpredictable nature of their powers. The powers manifested by weird boys reflect the crude nature of orc psychology. They do not produce subtle manipulations of reality or complex psychic phenomena. Instead, they generate raw destructive force that mirrors orc preferences for direct, violent solutions. Lightning bolts arc from their fingertips, frying anything they touch. Telekinetic waves knock down walls and crush vehicles. Some weird boys can teleport themselves and nearby orcs across battlefields, though these journeys often result in partial materialization inside solid objects or arrival several meters above the intended destination. The relationship between orc numbers and technological effectiveness creates a dangerous escalation pattern that has plagued the galaxy for millennia. Small orc raiding parties pose manageable threats to Imperial forces, as their limited numbers cannot generate sufficient psychic reinforcement to make their crude weapons truly dangerous. However, as these raiders achieve victories and attract more followers, their growing numbers increase the effectiveness of their equipment and tactics. A successful orc warboss who starts with a few dozen followers might find his force growing to hundreds as word of his victories spreads. The increased psychic field generated by these additional orcs makes his weapons more accurate, his vehicles more reliable, and his tactical decisions more inspired. This improved performance leads to greater victories, which attract even more followers, creating a snowball effect that can transform a minor raiding force into a sector-threatening Wa within a matter of years. Imperial military doctrine recognizes this escalation pattern and emphasizes the importance of crushing orc forces while they remain small and manageable. Planetary defense forces are instructed to respond immediately to any reports of orc activity, as delays allow the greenskin population to grow beyond local capabilities to contain. However, the galaxy's vast size and the Imperium's countless other threats mean that many orc infestations go unaddressed until they have already reached dangerous proportions. The confidence factor plays an equally important role in orc effectiveness. Orcs who believe they are superior fighters perform significantly better in combat than those who doubt their abilities. This psychological component interacts with the Gestalt Psychic Field to create measurable improvements in combat performance. Orcs led by successful warbosses who have never lost a major battle fight with enhanced strength and coordination, their absolute faith in their leader's invincibility translating into actual tactical advantages. Conversely, orcs who have suffered significant defeats or who doubt their leader's competence show markedly reduced combat effectiveness. Their weapons jam more frequently, their vehicles break down at critical moments, and their tactical coordination deteriorates. This vulnerability explains why assassination of key Ork leaders can cause entire WA forces to collapse, as the death of a respected warboss can shatter the confidence that holds the psychic field together. The interaction between belief and reality becomes most apparent in large-scale Ork technology projects. Gargants, the massive walking war machines that serve as mobile fortresses for major WA forces, should be impossible to construct given Ork technological limitations. These titans stand hundreds of meters tall, bristling with weapons that could level city blocks, yet they are built using crude welding techniques and salvaged materials that should never support such massive structures. Gargants function because thousands of Orks believe they should function. The collective psychic field generated by entire clans of mechboys and their assistants makes the impossible engineering work through sheer force of expectation. The massive weapons fire despite having no visible ammunition storage. The legs support impossible weights because the Orks building them never doubt that they will work. The crude reactor systems provide power that should require sophisticated fusion technology because the operators are absolutely confident in their ability to make big things go boom. Similar principles apply to Ork spacecraft, which regularly achieve interstellar travel despite appearing to be little more than asteroids with engines welded to them. These ramshackle vessels lack proper life support systems, navigation equipment, or structural integrity, yet they successfully transport millions of Orks across the galaxy. Imperial Navy encounters with Ork fleets consistently report vessels that should have broken apart under their own acceleration, continuing to function through what can only be described as collective stubbornness. The Gestalt Psychic Field also influences Ork reproduction and development cycles. Spores released in areas with high concentrations of WA energy germinate faster and produce more aggressive specimens. Young Orks growing up in successful WA environments mature more quickly and reach larger sizes than those developing in isolated or defeated populations. The psychic atmosphere literally shapes their physical development, creating stronger warriors when the collective expects strength and cunning leaders when the situation demands tactical thinking. This environmental influence extends to specialized Ork castes as well. Mechboys emerge more frequently in populations that face complex technological challenges, as the collective need for better equipment triggers genetic expressions that produce more technically minded individuals. Painboys appear in greater numbers during extended campaigns, where medical expertise becomes crucial for maintaining fighting strength. Even Weirdboys manifest their abilities more reliably in populations under significant psychic pressure from large-scale conflicts. The unpredictable nature of WA energy makes it impossible for Imperial forces to develop consistent countermeasures against Ork psychic phenomena. Unlike human psychers who follow established patterns of warp manipulation, Ork psychic effects operate through mechanisms that seem to bypass normal psychic defenses entirely. Null fields that completely suppress human psychic abilities have minimal impact on Ork Gestalt effects, as the collective belief operates on a different level of reality interaction. The collective psychic field that shapes Ork technology and combat effectiveness also determines their social organization in ways that mirror the brutal simplicity of their degraded minds. Ork society operates on the fundamental principle that physical dominance translates directly into social authority, creating a hierarchy that shifts constantly as individuals grow stronger or weaker through combat experience. This system produces leaders who have proven their worth through violence, while ensuring that the strongest specimens guide the species toward ever greater conflicts. At the bottom of this hierarchy exist the Gretchen, diminutive creatures barely reaching the height of a human child, but possessing enough intelligence to perform basic tasks under Ork supervision. These wretched beings emerge from the same spore colonies as their larger cousins, but represent the lowest expression of greenskin genetics. Their scrawny frames and cowardly nature make them natural servants, though they compensate for their physical weakness with a cunning that often surprises their masters. Gretchen handle much of the tedious work that keeps Ork society functioning, from ammunition production to equipment maintenance, their nimble fingers capable of detailed work that would frustrate larger orcs. Despite their lowly status, Gretchen develop complex social structures within their own ranks. They establish pecking orders based on their proximity to powerful orcs, with those serving successful warbosses enjoying higher status among their peers than Gretchen assigned to lesser masters. Some particularly clever Gretchen become indispensable to their orc overlords by demonstrating skills in mechanics, logistics, or even primitive accounting. These favored servants often survive longer than their contemporaries and occasionally accumulate enough resources to improve their living conditions marginally. The relationship between orcs and Gretchen resembles a master-slave dynamic, though it lacks the systematic oppression found in human slave societies. Orcs view Gretchen as naturally inferior beings whose purpose is to serve, much like humans might view domestic animals. This perspective means that while Gretchen face constant abuse and casual violence, they are not subjected to deliberate cruelty for its own sake. An orc might kick a Gretchen out of his way without thinking, but he would not torture one unless it had failed in its duties or provided entertainment value. Gretchen's survival depends on their ability to anticipate their master's needs and avoid attracting negative attention. They develop an almost supernatural ability to sense orc moods, scurrying away when their masters become agitated and appearing with tools or ammunition before being asked. This behavioral adaptation has become so ingrained that Gretchen often seem to read orc minds, though the phenomenon likely results from generations of natural selection favoring those with the best survival instincts. The Gretchen reproductive cycle operates independently of their orc masters, with spores producing new generations at regular intervals regardless of the local orc population. This biological independence ensures that orc forces always have access to servant labor, even during extended campaigns far from established territories. Gretchen's spores seem programmed to produce individuals with skills matching local needs, generating more mechanics when technical expertise is required or more laborers when heavy construction projects demand additional workforce. Above the Gretchen exist the Snotlings, creatures even smaller and less intelligent than their Gretchen cousins, but serving essential functions within the orc ecosystem. These diminutive beings barely qualify as sentient, operating more on instinct than conscious thought, yet they maintain the fungal gardens that provide food and raw materials for larger greenskins. Snotlings cultivate various species of edible fungi in vast underground chambers, their simple minds perfectly suited to the repetitive tasks required for successful agriculture. The Snotling agricultural system produces not only food, but also the organic compounds that orc mechboys use in their crude chemical processes. Different fungal strains yield substances with properties resembling industrial solvents, adhesives, and even primitive explosives. Snotlings somehow understand which fungi to cultivate for specific purposes, though they cannot articulate this knowledge or teach it deliberately to others. Their expertise appears entirely instinctual, programmed into their genetics by the same mechanisms that created the entire orc ecosystem. Regular orcs, known as boys, form the backbone of greenskin society and represent the species in its most typical form. These creatures stand roughly 2 meters tall when fully mature, their muscular frames covered in thick green skin that provides natural protection against minor injuries. Boys develop their strength and intelligence through constant fighting, growing larger and more cunning as they survive successive battles. This growth pattern means that older orcs inevitably become more powerful than younger ones, creating natural leadership hierarchies based on combat experience. The orc boy mentality focuses almost exclusively on warfare and the acquisition of better equipment for fighting. They measure success by the number of enemies killed, the quality of weapons captured, and the respect earned from their peers through displays of violence. Boys form loose affiliations based on shared interests in particular types of combat, with some gravitating toward close quarters fighting, while others prefer operating vehicles or heavy weapons. These preferences often reflect their individual growth patterns, as orcs who excel in specific combat roles tend to develop enhanced abilities in those areas. Competition among boys drives constant improvement in their fighting capabilities, as each individual seeks to prove his superiority over his peers. This competition takes many forms, from formal duels to contests of strength, marksmanship, or mechanical skill. Winners gain status and better equipment, while losers face mockery and reduced access to resources. The system ensures that the most capable fighters rise to positions of greater responsibility, though it also generates endless internal conflicts that can weaken Ork forces if not properly channeled by strong leadership. As boys grow larger and more experienced through successful combat, some develop into knobs, elite warriors who serve as squad leaders and enforcers for higher-ranking Orks. Knobs typically stand a head taller than regular boys and possess the scars, cybernetic implants, and elaborate equipment that mark them as veteran fighters. These individuals have survived dozens of major battles and accumulated enough wealth to afford superior weapons and armor, making them formidable opponents even by Ork standards. The transition from boy to knob occurs gradually as individuals prove their worth through repeated victories. There is no formal promotion process or ceremony marking this change in status. Instead, other Orks simply begin treating particularly successful fighters with greater respect, deferring to their opinions in tactical matters and following their lead during combat. Knobs who fail to maintain their reputations through continued success quickly find themselves demoted back to regular boy status, as Ork society recognizes only current performance rather than past achievements. Knobs often specialize in particular aspects of warfare, becoming experts in close combat, ranged fighting, or vehicle operations. These specializations reflect both their personal preferences and the demands of their local environment, as knobs serving in different types of Ork forces develop skills appropriate to their roles. Those operating with speed freaks become expert drivers and mechanics, while knobs in traditional infantry forces focus on perfecting their skills with choppa and slugga combinations. The authority structure above knobs varies depending on the size and organization of individual Ork forces. In smaller groups, a single big boss might command several dozen boys, with a handful of knobs serving as his lieutenants. These big bosses typically earn their positions by defeating previous leaders in single combat, or by demonstrating superior tactical abilities during major battles. Their authority depends entirely on their ability to lead successful raids and distribute captured loot fairly among their followers. Larger Ork forces require more complex leadership structures, with multiple big bosses serving under warbosses who have proven capable of coordinating major military operations. Warbosses represent the pinnacle of Ork society, massive individuals whose size and intelligence far exceed those of regular boys. These leaders often stand 3 meters tall or more, their bulk enhanced by extensive cybernetic modifications and their natural growth from decades of successful warfare. The process of becoming a warboss requires not only personal combat prowess, but also the charisma and tactical acumen necessary to attract and maintain large followings. Aspiring warbosses must demonstrate their ability to plan successful raids, negotiate with other Ork leaders, and manage the complex logistics required to support major military campaigns. Those who fail in these responsibilities quickly find their followers deserting to join more successful leaders, as Ork loyalty depends entirely on continued victory and generous distribution of captured wealth. Warboss authority extends beyond simple military command to encompass all aspects of Ork society within their territories. They make decisions about resource allocation, settle disputes between subordinates, and determine when and where their forces will fight. However, this authority remains contingent on continued success, as even the most powerful warboss can be challenged by ambitious subordinates who believe they could do better. These challenges usually take the form of single combat, though some clever Orks prefer to undermine their leaders through political maneuvering or by engineering military disasters that discredit their targets. The constant potential for leadership challenges creates a dynamic tension within Ork society that prevents stagnation while ensuring that only the most capable individuals rise to positions of real authority. Warbosses must balance aggression with caution, maintaining their reputations as fierce warriors while avoiding unnecessary risks that could provide opportunities for ambitious subordinates. This balance requires a level of strategic thinking that approaches genuine intelligence, explaining why the largest and oldest orcs often display cognitive abilities that surprise Imperial observers. Within this dominance-based hierarchy exist specialized castes that serve essential functions requiring specific knowledge and skills. These specialists emerge from the general orc population through genetic predisposition rather than training or education, their abilities manifesting as instinctual understanding of their chosen fields. The most important of these castes are the mech boys, pain boys, and weird boys, though others exist to fill various roles within orc society. Mech boys represent the technological backbone of orc civilization, possessing an intuitive understanding of mechanical principles that allows them to create functional equipment from salvaged materials. These specialists emerge from the general population when their genetic programming activates, usually during adolescence when their mechanical aptitudes become apparent. Young mech boys display an irresistible compulsion to tinker with machinery, taking apart captured equipment to understand its function and rebuilding it according to orc preferences. The mechbo caste operates according to hereditary knowledge encoded in their genetics rather than learned skills passed down through formal education. Each mechbo instinctively understands fundamental principles of engineering, metallurgy, and energy systems without requiring instruction from more experienced practitioners. This knowledge manifests as sudden insights and inspirations that guide their work, allowing them to solve complex technical problems through intuition rather than systematic analysis. Different mechboys specialize in various aspects of technology, depending on their individual genetic programming and the needs of their local communities. Some focus on weapons design, creating increasingly elaborate and destructive firearms that reflect orc preferences for loud, visible destruction. Others concentrate on vehicle construction, building the crude but effective transports that carry orc forces across battlefields and between star systems. The most gifted mechboys work on major projects like gargants or spacecraft, their enhanced abilities allowing them to coordinate the efforts of dozens of assistants in constructing massive war machines. Mechboy workshops serve as centers of technological development within orc society, bustling with activity as teams of specialists work on various projects simultaneously. These facilities typically occupy the most defensible positions within orc settlements, as the valuable equipment and expertise they contain make them prime targets for raids by rival factions. The workshops themselves reflect orc aesthetic preferences, with towering piles of salvaged materials organized according to incomprehensible systems that somehow allow the mechboys to locate specific components when needed. The relationship between mechboys and their customers operates on a barter system based on mutual benefit rather than formal economic structures. Orc warriors provide mechboys with raw materials, captured equipment, and protection in exchange for weapons, vehicles, and equipment modifications. Successful mechboys accumulate substantial wealth in the form of rare materials and exotic technologies, though they typically reinvest these resources into increasingly ambitious projects rather than pursuing personal luxury. Pain boys fulfill the medical functions within orc society, though their methods bear little resemblance to conventional healing practices. These specialists possess an instinctive understanding of orc physiology that allows them to perform crude but effective surgical procedures using improvised tools and questionable techniques. Painboy treatments typically involve extensive use of mechanical prosthetics, chemical stimulants, and surgical modifications that enhance combat performance rather than simply healing injuries. The Painboy approach to medicine emphasizes functionality over patient comfort, with treatments designed to get wounded orcs back into combat as quickly as possible rather than ensuring complete recovery. A painboy might replace a damaged limb with a mechanical substitute that provides enhanced strength, or install stimulant dispensers that allow warriors to ignore pain and fatigue during critical battles. These modifications often prove more effective than the original biological systems, leading many orcs to seek out painboy services even when not seriously injured. Painboy expertise extends beyond simple surgery to encompass the creation of various combat drugs and performance enhancers that improve orc fighting abilities. These specialists distill chemical compounds from fungal sources and salvaged materials, producing stimulants that increase aggression, painkillers that allow warriors to continue fighting despite severe injuries, and various toxins used to coat weapons or create crude chemical weapons. The effectiveness of these substances depends partly on painboy skill and partly on the psychic reinforcement provided by orc belief in their efficacy. The social status of painboys within orc hierarchy depends largely on their success rates and the reputation of warriors they have treated. Painboys who consistently return wounded fighters to combat effectiveness enjoy high status and generous compensation for their services. Those whose patients frequently die or suffer complications from their treatments find themselves relegated to working on Gretchen and other expendable personnel, as more valuable warriors seek out more reliable practitioners. The endless warfare that defines orc existence has naturally sorted the greenskin race into distinct cultural groups, each developing their own approaches to combat, technology, and social organization. These great clans represent the primary divisions within orc society, transcending individual WoW forces and planetary boundaries to create galaxy-spanning traditions that influence how different orc populations wage war. While all orcs share the same basic biology and psychological drives, the great clans have evolved distinct characteristics that make them immediately recognizable to both their enemies and fellow greenskins. The emergence of these clans appears to be a natural consequence of orc genetic diversity and environmental adaptation. Different spore colonies develop along slightly different evolutionary paths depending on local conditions, combat experiences, and the psychic influences of their Gestalt fields. Over millions of years, these variations have crystallized into stable cultural patterns that persist across multiple generations and geographic regions. Each clan maintains its own traditions, preferred fighting styles, and distinctive visual markers that allow orcs to identify their allegiances at a glance. Clan membership operates through a combination of genetic predisposition and cultural adoption. Orcs emerging from spore colonies in territories controlled by specific clans naturally develop characteristics associated with those groups, their genetics responding to the dominant psychic influences in their environment. However, individual orcs can also choose to join different clans if their personal preferences align better with alternative fighting styles, though such transitions require proving their commitment through appropriate displays of skill and dedication. The Goths represent the most numerous and traditionally minded of all orc clans, embodying the species' fundamental love of close quarters combat and direct confrontation. These orcs paint their equipment in stark black colors decorated with white skull motifs and jagged checkerboard patterns that create a menacing appearance designed to intimidate enemies before battle even begins. Goth warriors pride themselves on their prowess with traditional orc weapons, particularly the iconic choppa and slugga combination that has served greenskin fighters for millennia. Goth society places enormous emphasis on personal combat ability and adherence to what they consider proper orc traditions. These warriors view ranged combat as acceptable but fundamentally inferior to the visceral satisfaction of close quarters, fighting where they can see their enemies' faces as they die. Goth boys train constantly with melee weapons, developing elaborate fighting techniques that combine brutal efficiency with spectacular displays of skill, designed to impress their peers and terrify their opponents. The Goth approach to warfare emphasizes overwhelming assault tactics that bring their forces into direct contact with enemy lines as quickly as possible. They favor straightforward battle plans that rely on superior numbers and individual fighting, prowess rather than complex maneuvers or technological advantages. Goth warbosses typically lead from the front, their massive frames encased in heavy armor and wielding enormous power claws or massive choppas that can cleave through vehicle armor as easily as flesh. Goth equipment reflects their preference for traditional designs and proven effectiveness over innovation or exotic technology. Their vehicles tend to be heavily armored transports designed to deliver warriors directly into combat rather than providing fire support from a distance. Goth mechboys focus on creating robust, reliable equipment that can withstand the punishment of extended melee combat, often reinforcing their creations with additional armor plating and close combat weapons. The clan's social structure operates according to strict hierarchies based on combat prowess and adherence to traditional values. Goth knobs earn their positions through demonstrated skill in personal combat and their ability to inspire other warriors through their own example. These leaders often bear extensive scarification and ritual markings that chronicle their combat achievements, creating living records of their martial accomplishments that serve as inspiration for younger fighters. Goth religious practices center around the worship of Gork and Mork in their most martial aspects, with particular emphasis on the brutal cunning that allows warriors to defeat superior opponents through superior fighting skill. Their shamans, known as weirdboys, channel the clan's collective aggression into devastating psychic attacks that complement their physical assault tactics. These psykers often wear elaborate bone armor and skull decorations that reflect the clan's death-obsessed aesthetic while providing focus for their destructive abilities. The Bad Moons represent the wealthiest and most ostentatious of all Ork clans, their yellow-painted equipment and elaborate decorations serving as visible displays of their superior economic status within greenskin society. These Orks possess a genetic quirk that causes their teeth to grow faster than those of other clans, providing them with a constant supply of the currency that drives Ork commerce. This biological advantage allows Bad Moons to accumulate vast quantities of equipment, weapons, and luxury items that would be beyond the reach of less fortunate Orks. Bad Moon society revolves around the acquisition and display of wealth, with individual status determined not only by combat prowess, but also by the quality and quantity of possessions. These Orks favor elaborate weapons decorated with gold plating, precious stones, and intricate engravings that serve no functional purpose beyond demonstrating their owner's affluence. Bad Moon vehicles bristle with unnecessary but expensive modifications, from chrome exhausts to gem-encrusted armor plating that makes them easily identifiable on any battlefield. The clan's approach to warfare emphasizes the deployment of superior firepower rather than relying on personal combat skills or numerical advantages. Bad Moons can afford the most advanced weapons available to Ork technology, from massive artillery pieces to exotic energy weapons that other clans can only dream of acquiring. Their forces typically include large numbers of heavy weapons specialists and vehicle crews who rain destruction on enemy positions from relatively safe distances. Bad Moon mechboys represent some of the most skilled technicians in Ork society, their access to superior materials and exotic components allowing them to create weapons and vehicles that approach the sophistication of Imperial technology. These specialists often incorporate captured human or alien equipment into their designs, creating hybrid systems that combine Ork reliability with advanced capabilities. The resulting creations serve as status symbols as much as functional weapons, their elaborate construction demonstrating their creators' skill and their owners' wealth. The social dynamics within Bad Moon society create constant competition for economic supremacy, with individual Orks striving to outdo their peers through increasingly extravagant displays of wealth. This competition drives innovation and excellence in weapon design while ensuring that the clan maintains access to the best equipment available. However, it also creates internal tensions as less successful members become resentful of their more prosperous peers, occasionally leading to violent conflicts that can weaken the clan's overall effectiveness. Bad Moon religious practices focus on the aspects of Gork and Mork associated with cunning and acquisition, with particular emphasis on the intelligence required to accumulate and maintain wealth. Their weirdboys often wear elaborate golden armor and carry ornate staves decorated with precious metals and gems, their psychic abilities enhanced by the superior focus crystals and amplification, devices that only the wealthiest Orks can afford. The evil Sunts embody the Ork obsession with speed and mobility, their red painted vehicles and equipment reflecting their belief that faster is always better regardless of other considerations. These orcs have elevated the simple observation that red things go faster into a comprehensive philosophy that influences every aspect of their culture and warfare. Evil Sun's forces consist primarily of fast-moving vehicles and mounted warriors who strike quickly and withdraw before enemies can respond effectively. Evil Sun's society places enormous value on speed, both in terms of vehicle performance and personal reflexes. These orcs constantly compete to see who can drive faster, shoot quicker, or react more rapidly to changing battlefield conditions. Their vehicles undergo extensive modifications designed to increase their top speeds, often at the expense of armor protection or structural integrity. Evil Sun's mechboys specialize in engine tuning and aerodynamic improvements that push their creations to performance levels that would be impossible for other clans to achieve. The clan's approach to warfare emphasizes rapid strikes and hit-and-run tactics that take advantage of their superior mobility to avoid prolonged engagements with enemy forces. Evil Sun's prefer to attack isolated targets or vulnerable flanks where their speed allows them to achieve local superiority before reinforcements can arrive. Their battle plans typically involve multiple simultaneous attacks designed to confuse and overwhelm enemy commanders while preventing coordinated responses. Evil Sun's equipment reflects their need for speed and mobility above all other considerations. Their vehicles feature oversized engines, streamlined bodywork, and minimal armor protection that reduces weight and improves acceleration. Weapons tend to be lightweight and designed for firing on the move, with particular emphasis on rapid-fire systems that can deliver maximum damage during brief engagement windows. Even their infantry equipment prioritizes mobility, with lighter armor and weapons that allow for rapid movement across the battlefield. The social structure within Evil Sun's society rewards those who demonstrate superior speed and agility rather than simple combat prowess or tactical acumen. Their leaders typically emerge from the ranks of the most skilled drivers and pilots, individuals who have proven their ability to navigate complex battlefield conditions at maximum velocity while coordinating the movements of their subordinates. These speed bosses often wear distinctive racing gear and pilot heavily modified vehicles that serve as mobile command centers for their forces. Evil Sun's religious practices emphasize the aspects of Gork and Mork associated with quick thinking and rapid action, celebrating the divine cunning that allows warriors to strike before their enemies can react. Their Weirdboys often channel their psychic abilities through high-speed movements and frenzied dances that build up Wa energy through kinetic motion rather than static meditation. These psychers frequently ride specially modified vehicles that serve as mobile psychic amplifiers, allowing them to project their powers across wide areas while maintaining the mobility that defines their clan. The Death Skulls represent the most superstitious and acquisitive of all orc clans, their blue-painted equipment decorated with skull motifs and lucky charms that reflect their obsession with fortune and fate. These orcs believe that blue is the luckiest color, and that proper decoration with appropriate symbols can influence the outcome of battles and other important events. Death Skull forces consist largely of scavengers and looters who excel at acquiring and repurposing equipment from defeated enemies and abandoned battlefields. Death Skull society operates according to complex superstitions and ritualistic behaviors that govern everything from equipment selection to tactical decision-making. These orcs believe that certain actions, objects, and symbols can influence their luck in battle, leading them to develop elaborate pre-combat rituals and to collect vast quantities of items they consider fortunate. Their equipment often features multiple lucky charms, captured enemy insignia, and trophies taken from defeated opponents, creating a distinctive appearance that makes Death Skull forces immediately recognizable. The clan's approach to warfare emphasizes the acquisition of enemy equipment and the use of captured weapons against their former owners. Death Skulls excel at battlefield salvage operations, their forces including large numbers of specialists trained to quickly strip useful components from destroyed vehicles and fallen enemies. This expertise allows them to maintain and upgrade their equipment using materials that other clans would consider worthless scrap, creating hybrid systems that combine the best features of multiple technological traditions. Deathskull Mechboys represent some of the most innovative technicians in Ork society. Their willingness to experiment with captured alien technology, leading to unique weapons and vehicles that cannot be found in other clans. These specialists view every battlefield as a potential source of raw materials and inspiration, constantly seeking new components and design concepts that can be incorporated into their creations. The resulting equipment often features unusual combinations of Ork engineering and alien technology that produce unexpected capabilities. The social dynamics within Deathskull society create a culture of competitive acquisition, where individual status depends partly on the rarity and perceived luckiness of personal possessions. Deathskull warriors often spend considerable time and effort acquiring specific items they believe will improve their combat effectiveness or general fortune, leading to complex trading networks and occasional conflicts over particularly desirable objects. This focus on acquisition extends beyond simple materialism to encompass a genuine belief that proper preparation and the right equipment can overcome any obstacle. Deathskull religious practices incorporate extensive use of divination and fortune-telling, with their weird boys serving as oracles who interpret omens and predict future events. These psychers often surround themselves with vast collections of mystical artifacts and lucky charms that they believe enhance their psychic abilities and provide protection against hostile forces. Their predictions, while often cryptic and subject to multiple interpretations, carry considerable weight within Deathskull society and frequently influence major tactical and strategic decisions. The Blood Axes represent the most disciplined and tactically sophisticated of all Ork clans, their military organization incorporating elements borrowed from Imperial Guard doctrine and other human military traditions. These Orks have observed human fighting methods during extended conflicts and adopted those techniques they consider effective, creating a hybrid approach to warfare that combines Ork aggression with human tactical flexibility. Blood Axe forces often employ coordinated maneuvers, supporting fire, and other advanced tactical concepts that would be foreign to most greenskin armies. Blood Axe society operates according to more formal military hierarchies than other clans, with clear chains of command and standardized procedures for various combat situations. These Orks value discipline and coordination alongside individual fighting prowess, recognizing that organized teamwork can overcome opponents who might be superior in terms of raw combat ability. Their leaders typically emerge from the ranks of those who demonstrate tactical acumen and the ability to coordinate complex operations rather than simply being the largest or most aggressive fighters available. The clan's approach to warfare emphasizes the use of combined arms tactics and coordinated assaults that maximize the effectiveness of different unit types working together. Blood Axe forces often include specialized squads trained for specific roles, from reconnaissance and infiltration to heavy weapons support and assault operations. Their battle plans typically involve multiple phases and contingency options, allowing them to adapt to changing battlefield conditions while maintaining overall strategic coherence. Blood Axe equipment reflects their adoption of human military concepts, with standardized weapons and vehicles that can be easily maintained and operated by different crews. Their mechboys often study captured Imperial equipment to understand the principles behind human engineering, incorporating these insights into their own designs to create weapons and vehicles that combine Ork durability with human precision. The resulting equipment often appears more refined and organized than typical Ork technology, though it retains the distinctive greenskin aesthetic and reliability. The social structure within Blood Axe society creates opportunities for advancement based on demonstrated competence and leadership ability rather than simple physical dominance. Their promotion system recognizes various forms of excellence, from tactical innovation to logistical expertise, allowing individuals with different strengths to contribute to the clan's overall effectiveness. This meritocratic approach attracts orcs from other clans who value organization and efficiency over traditional greenskin chaos. Blood Axe religious practices emphasize the aspects of Gork and Mork associated with cunning strategy and intelligent planning, celebrating the divine wisdom that allows warriors to defeat superior opponents through superior tactics rather than brute force. Their weird boys often serve as tactical advisors as well as psychic specialists, their abilities enhanced by their understanding of battlefield dynamics and enemy psychology. These psychers frequently coordinate their powers with conventional military operations, providing psychic support that complements rather than replaces traditional weapons and tactics. The Snakebites represent the most primitive and traditional of all orc clans, their rejection of advanced technology in favor of ancient fighting methods and natural creatures, setting them apart from their more technologically inclined cousins. These orcs believe that the old ways are the best ways, maintaining cultural traditions and combat techniques that date back to the earliest periods of orc civilization. Snakebite forces consist largely of infantry warriors supported by various species of squigs and other creatures that serve as living weapons and transportation. Snakebite society operates according to ancient tribal customs and shamanistic traditions that emphasize harmony with the natural orc ecosystem and respect for the wisdom of their ancestors. These orcs view excessive reliance on technology as a weakness that separates warriors from their natural fighting instincts and the primal forces that give orcs their strength. Their settlements often resemble primitive tribal camps rather than the industrial complexes favored by other clans, with simple structures built from natural materials and decorated with traditional symbols and totems. The clan's approach to warfare emphasizes the use of natural weapons and creatures rather than manufactured equipment, with warriors relying on their personal combat skills and the assistance of trained squigs to overcome their enemies. Snakebite forces often include large numbers of cavalry mounted on various species of riding squigs, as well as infantry supported by attack squigs bred specifically for combat roles. Their tactics tend to focus on close quarters fighting and the use of terrain advantages rather than technological superiority. Snakebite equipment consists primarily of simple weapons and armor crafted from natural materials using traditional techniques passed down through generations of tribal craftsmen. Their weapons often incorporate squig teeth, claws, and other biological components that provide superior cutting power and durability compared to manufactured alternatives. Armor typically consists of cured squig hide reinforced with bone plates and metal studs, providing excellent protection while maintaining the flexibility required for their preferred fighting styles. The social structure within Snakebite society follows ancient tribal patterns based on age, wisdom, and spiritual authority rather than simple physical dominance. Their leaders often emerge from the ranks of experienced hunters and beast masters who have demonstrated their ability to work with the natural creatures that form the backbone of Snakebite military power. These chiefs typically wear elaborate ceremonial gear decorated with trophies from their hunting expeditions and the bones of particularly dangerous creatures they have defeated in single combat. Snakebite religious practices center around shamanistic traditions that predate the formation of the other great clans, with their spiritual leaders serving as intermediaries between the physical world and the primal forces that govern orc existence. These shamans often possess extensive knowledge of squig breeding and training techniques, their understanding of biological systems allowing them to develop new strains of creatures for specific combat roles. Their ceremonies typically involve ritualistic hunts and contests of strength that reinforce traditional values while maintaining the spiritual connections that bind their communities together. The technological foundation of orc civilization rests upon principles that defy conventional understanding of engineering and physics, operating through a combination of genetic memory, psychic reinforcement, and what can only be described as applied stubbornness. Orc technology emerges from the collision between their degraded Quark heritage and the harsh realities of their current existence, creating a unique approach to problem solving that produces functional equipment from materials that should never work together. This ramshackle engineering philosophy has sustained greenskin civilization for millions of years, allowing them to compete with technologically superior species through sheer determination and an intuitive understanding of how things should function. The Mechbo caste represents the living embodiment of this technological tradition, their genetic programming containing fragments of the advanced engineering knowledge that once allowed the Krork to construct sophisticated war machines capable of challenging the Necrons during the war in heaven. Modern Mechboys cannot access this knowledge directly through conscious thought, instead experiencing it as sudden inspirations and intuitive leaps that guide their work. These genetic memories manifest as an irresistible compulsion to build, modify, and improve mechanical devices, driving Mechboys to spend countless hours tinkering with equipment that other species would consider irreparably damaged. Mechboy workshops serve as the beating heart of Ork technological development, chaotic spaces where the boundaries between genius and madness blur beyond recognition. These facilities typically occupy the most defensible positions within Ork settlements, their importance to the community's survival, ensuring they receive protection from both internal disputes and external threats. The workshops themselves reflect the Ork aesthetic of functional brutality, with towering piles of salvaged materials organized according to systems that appear random to outsiders, but somehow allow the resident Mechboys to locate specific components when needed. The interior of a typical Mechboy workshop resembles a mechanical graveyard brought to life through constant activity and the application of Ork ingenuity. Partially disassembled vehicles occupy every available space, their components scattered across workbenches that groan under the weight of tools, spare parts, and half-finished projects. Overhead gantries support massive lifting devices cobbled together from hydraulic systems salvaged from Imperial construction equipment, their crude but effective design allowing Mechboys to manipulate components that would otherwise require specialized facilities to handle. The tools used by Mechboys reflect their practical approach to engineering, consisting primarily of hammers, wrenches, and cutting implements that can be applied to virtually any mechanical problem through sufficient force and determination. These implements often show signs of extensive modification, with standard tools enhanced through the addition of power sources, cutting edges, or impact amplifiers that increase their effectiveness beyond their original specifications. A Mechboy's personal toolkit represents years of accumulated experience and modification, each tool customized to suit its owner's particular working style and the types of projects he typically undertakes. The materials that fuel Ork technological development come from every conceivable source, with Mechboys displaying an almost supernatural ability to identify useful components within what appears to be worthless scrap. Battlefield salvage operations provide the bulk of raw materials, as destroyed vehicles and equipment yield metal plating, electronic components, and mechanical systems that can be repurposed for new applications. Imperial Guard Chimera hulls become the basis for Ork trucks, their armor plating reinforced with additional steel plates, and their engines modified to produce the distinctive roar that Orks consider essential for proper vehicle operation. The scavenging process extends beyond simple material acquisition to encompass a form of technological archaeology, with experienced Mechboys capable of identifying the potential applications of components that bear no obvious relationship to their intended purposes. A damaged cogitator from an Imperial facility might be stripped for its rare metal components, while its memory cores are repurposed as targeting systems for Ork artillery pieces. The plasma containment vessels from destroyed Space Marine weapons provide the foundation for Ork energy weapons, their sophisticated construction allowing Mechboys to create crude but effective copies of advanced Imperial technology. The construction techniques employed by Mechboys prioritize functionality and durability over aesthetic considerations or manufacturing precision, resulting in equipment that appears crude but proves remarkably effective in combat situations. Welding operations use whatever materials are available, creating joints that combine different metal alloys in ways that should produce structural weaknesses, but somehow result in connections stronger than the original components. Electrical systems route power through paths that ignore conventional circuit design, yet somehow deliver the required energy to their destinations without the catastrophic failures that Imperial tech priests predict. The principle of if it's not broken, hit it with a bigger hammer governs Ork approaches to both construction and maintenance, reflecting their fundamental belief that mechanical problems can be solved through the application of sufficient force. This philosophy extends beyond simple repair work to encompass design decisions, with mechboys routinely over-engineering their creations to withstand levels of abuse that would destroy equipment built according to more conventional specifications. Ork vehicles feature reinforced chassis members, redundant power systems, and impact-resistant components that allow them to continue functioning despite damage that would immobilize Imperial equivalents. The hammer itself holds special significance within mechboy culture, serving as both a practical tool and a symbol of their engineering philosophy. Mechboy hammers range from simple hand tools to massive power-assisted devices capable of reshaping vehicle armor plating with single blows. The largest hammers require mechanical assistance to operate, their weight and size making them impractical for conventional use, but perfectly suited to the heavy-duty applications that characterize Ork construction projects. These implements often feature decorative elements that reflect their owners' personalities and achievements, with successful mechboys carrying hammers adorned with kill markings, clan symbols, and trophies from particularly challenging projects. The testing phase of Ork technological development operates according to principles that would horrify Imperial safety inspectors, with new equipment subjected to increasingly extreme conditions until either it proves its worth or fails catastrophically. Mechboys consider explosive failures to be valuable learning experiences rather than dangerous setbacks, their approach to testing emphasizing the identification of breaking points rather than the prevention of accidents. Prototype weapons are tested by firing them at maximum power until they either destroy their targets or explode, while new vehicles undergo stress testing that involves driving them at maximum speed over the most challenging terrain available. The relationship between mechboys and the broader Ork community operates through a complex system of mutual dependency and professional respect that transcends the usual dominance hierarchies found in greenskin society. While mechboys must still prove their worth through displays of competence and occasional physical confrontations, their specialized knowledge grants them a degree of protection from the casual violence that characterizes most Ork interactions. Warriors who might readily challenge each other over minor disputes will defer to mechboy expertise when dealing with technical problems, recognizing that their survival depends on maintaining access to functional equipment. The famous inventions that have emerged from mechboy workshops over the millennia represent the pinnacle of Ork engineering achievement, combining traditional design concepts with innovative solutions to create weapons and vehicles that have become synonymous with greenskin warfare. The choppa stands as perhaps the most iconic example of Ork engineering philosophy, its simple design concealing sophisticated metallurgical techniques that produce blades capable of cutting through ceramite armor. The basic choppa consists of a heavy metal blade attached to a reinforced handle, its weight and balance optimized for the powerful overhead strikes that characterize Ork close combat techniques. The construction of a proper choppa requires more skill than its crude appearance suggests, with mechboys employing techniques that combine traditional blacksmithing with advanced metallurgy to create blades that maintain their edge despite repeated impacts against hard targets. The metal itself often consists of layered alloys that provide different properties at various points along the blade, with harder materials at the cutting edge backed by more flexible metals that absorb impact shock. The resulting weapons possess a durability that surprises Imperial observers, maintaining their effectiveness through extended combat operations that would dull or break conventional blades. Choppa design varies considerably between different mechboys and regional preferences, with some favoring massive two-handed weapons that can cleave through multiple opponents with single strikes, while others prefer lighter, more maneuverable designs that allow for rapid combinations of attacks. The most elaborate choppas incorporate power fields or molecular disruptor technology salvaged from Imperial weapons, their enhanced cutting ability making them capable of slicing through vehicle armor as easily as flesh. These power choppas represent the pinnacle of Ork melee weapon technology, their construction requiring rare materials and advanced techniques that only the most skilled mechboys can master. The shooter represents Ork attempts to create reliable ranged weapons using salvaged materials and intuitive engineering principles, resulting in firearms that appear crude but deliver devastating firepower in combat situations. The basic shooter design consists of a simple barrel attached to a firing mechanism that launches projectiles through the application of explosive force, its operation depending more on robust construction than precision engineering. The ammunition used by shooters typically consists of whatever materials are readily available, from properly manufactured bullets to random pieces of scrap metal that achieve lethal velocity through sheer kinetic energy. Shooter construction techniques prioritize reliability and ease of maintenance over accuracy or sophisticated features, with mechboys designing weapons that can function despite exposure to extreme conditions and minimal maintenance. The firing mechanisms employ simple but robust designs that can be repaired using basic tools and readily available materials, ensuring that Ork forces can maintain their weapons even during extended campaigns far from established supply lines. The barrels themselves often show signs of extensive modification, with mechboys adding compensators, flash suppressors, and other devices that improve performance while contributing to the distinctive appearance that makes Ork weapons immediately recognizable. The variety of shooter designs reflects the diverse needs and preferences of different Ork units, with some variants optimized for specific combat roles or environmental conditions. Big shooters represent scaled-up versions of the basic design, their larger caliber and increased rate of fire making them effective against both infantry and light vehicles. These weapons require dedicated crews to operate effectively, their weight and ammunition consumption making them impractical for individual warriors, but devastating when employed as squad support weapons. Trucks serve as the backbone of Ork ground transportation, their rugged construction and simple design making them ideal for the harsh conditions and rough handling that characterize greenskin military operations. The basic truck design consists of a reinforced chassis mounting an oversized engine, minimal armor protection, and an open cargo area capable of transporting a squad of Ork warriors along with their equipment. The construction techniques used in truck assembly emphasize durability and ease of repair over comfort or fuel efficiency, with mechboys designing vehicles that can continue operating despite damage that would immobilize more sophisticated transports. Truck engines represent masterpieces of Ork engineering, their crude but effective design producing enormous amounts of power while running on virtually any combustible fuel. These power plants typically consist of multiple cylinders arranged in configurations that ignore conventional engine design principles, their operation generating the distinctive roar that Orks consider essential for proper vehicle performance. The fuel systems can process everything from refined promethium to fermented squig waste, their robust construction allowing them to extract energy from materials that would destroy more delicate Imperial engines. The armor protection on trucks varies considerably depending on available materials and the preferences of their crews, with some vehicles featuring extensive additional plating, while others rely on speed and maneuverability for survival. The armor itself typically consists of salvaged metal plates welded directly to the chassis, their arrangement following no standardized pattern, but somehow providing effective protection against enemy fire. The most heavily armored trucks resemble mobile fortresses, their crews adding layers of protection that transform simple transports into assault vehicles capable of surviving direct hits from anti-tank weapons. The massive gargants and stampas represent the ultimate expression of Ork engineering ambition, their construction requiring the coordinated efforts of entire mechboy clans working together to create war machines that rival Imperial titans in size and destructive capability. These colossal constructs stand hundreds of meters tall, their towering frames bristling with weapons systems that can level city blocks and armor protection that can withstand sustained bombardment from heavy artillery. The construction of a gargant represents a major undertaking for any Ork community, requiring years of preparation, and the accumulation of vast quantities of raw materials. Gargant construction begins with the fabrication of a massive internal framework that provides structural support for the completed machine. Its design incorporating principles of load distribution and stress management that mech boys understand intuitively despite their lack of formal engineering education. The framework itself consists of salvaged structural steel reinforced with additional bracing members, its construction requiring specialized lifting equipment and welding techniques that push Ork technology to its limits. The completed framework must be capable of supporting not only the weight of armor plating and weapon systems, but also the dynamic stresses generated by the machine's movement across uneven terrain. The power systems that drive Gargants represent some of the most sophisticated technology in the Ork arsenal, their design incorporating multiple redundant generators that provide the enormous amounts of energy required to operate the machine's weapons and motive systems. These power plants typically consist of massive fusion reactors cobbled together from salvaged components, their operation depending on Ork intuitive understanding of nuclear physics rather than formal scientific knowledge. The reactor cores themselves often incorporate materials and technologies that should be incompatible with fusion processes, yet somehow achieve stable operation through the psychic reinforcement provided by the collective belief of their operators. The weapon systems mounted on Gargants dwarf those found on smaller Ork vehicles, their massive size allowing them to mount artillery pieces that would normally require dedicated gun emplacements. The primary armament typically consists of enormous cannons capable of firing projectiles the size of small vehicles, their destructive power sufficient to demolish fortified positions with single shots. Secondary weapons include multiple missile launchers, energy weapons, and close combat systems that allow Gargants to engage enemies at all ranges while maintaining their effectiveness in different combat situations. The scattered raids and planetary conquests that characterize typical Ork military activity pale in comparison to the massive campaigns that periodically sweep across the galaxy like green tsunamis of destruction. These great wars represent the ultimate expression of Ork potential, massive military undertakings that unite millions of greenskins under the leadership of exceptionally powerful warbosses whose psychic presence can coordinate forces spanning multiple star systems. The scale and devastation of these campaigns have shaped Imperial history, forcing humanity to develop new military doctrines and defensive strategies, while demonstrating the terrifying potential that lies dormant within the Ork species. The earliest recorded Great War to threaten human civilization emerged during the Great Crusade, when the Emperor's forces first encountered the massive war machine assembled by the warboss known as Tyrik-Kage. This colossal greenskin had spent decades conquering and unifying Ork tribes across the Ulanor system, transforming what had been a collection of minor raiding forces into a military juggernaut that controlled multiple worlds and commanded resources that dwarfed those of most human civilizations. Tyrik-Kage himself stood nearly 4 meters tall, his massive frame encased in elaborate power armor decorated with the skulls of defeated enemies and the twisted wreckage of destroyed Imperial vehicles. The Ulanor system had become a fortress of Ork engineering prowess under Tyrik-Kage's leadership, with the primary world transformed into a massive military-industrial complex capable of producing war machines on a scale that impressed even Imperial observers. Orbital shipyards constructed from asteroids and salvaged materials churned out crude but effective spacecraft, while surface factories staffed by millions of Gretchen workers produced weapons and equipment for the ever-growing WA forces. The system's defensive installations included massive gun platforms built into asteroid bases, their weapons capable of engaging Imperial Navy vessels at ranges that pushed Ork gunnery technology to its limits. Tyrik-Kage's tactical acumen exceeded that of typical Ork leaders, his strategic planning incorporating concepts of supply line management, coordinated fleet movements, and multi-system campaign logistics that demonstrated the intellectual potential of fully mature Ork specimens. His forces employed combined arms tactics that coordinated ground assaults with orbital bombardments, while his naval commanders demonstrated sophisticated understanding of fleet engagement principles that allowed them to achieve tactical victories against Imperial Navy squadrons despite their technological disadvantages. The WA forces under his command numbered in the tens of millions, their organization and discipline approaching levels that would have been familiar to the ancient Krork. The threat posed by Wa Erlak Erg was so severe that the Emperor himself took personal command of the campaign to destroy it, deploying multiple Space Marine legions, along with massive Imperial army formations, in what became known as the Ulener Crusade. The scale of forces committed to this operation demonstrated the seriousness with which Imperial leadership viewed the Ork threat, with estimates suggesting that over 100,000 Space Marines participated in the final assault, along with millions of Imperial Army soldiers and thousands of war machines. The Luna Wolves, Imperial Fists, and White Scars legions spearheaded the assault, their combined expertise in siege warfare, void combat, and rapid strike operations proving essential to overcoming the sophisticated defenses that Erlak Erg had constructed. The final battle on Ulener itself became the stuff of legend, with Horus Lupercal leading the assault against Erlak Erg's fortress palace, while Imperial forces engaged millions of orcs across the planet's surface. The combat raged for weeks as Imperial forces fought their way through defensive positions that had been years in the making, their advance measured in meters rather than kilometers as they faced determined resistance from Ork forces fighting on their home ground. The climactic confrontation between Horus and Erlak Erg took place atop the warboss's massive fortress, their single combat witnessed by thousands of warriors from both sides as the fate of the campaign hung in the balance. Erlak Erg's death at the hands of the Warmaster caused the immediate collapse of his Wa forces, demonstrating the critical importance of leadership in maintaining Ork military cohesion. Without their unifying leader, the various Ork clans and tribes that had been united under his banner immediately began fighting among themselves for control of his territory and resources. This fragmentation allowed Imperial forces to systematically eliminate the remaining Ork strongholds, though the process required several more years of continuous military operations to ensure that no successor could emerge to rebuild the Wa threat. The victory at Ulener provided valuable lessons about Ork military capabilities and the importance of preventing their forces from achieving critical mass. Imperial military doctrine was modified to emphasize rapid response to Ork incursions, with standing orders requiring immediate deployment of overwhelming force against any greenskin concentration that showed signs of organized leadership or technological sophistication. The campaign also demonstrated the effectiveness of decapitation strikes against Ork command structures, leading to the development of specialized assassination protocols designed to eliminate key Ork leaders before they could unite significant forces. The most infamous Great Wa in recent Imperial history began in the 41st millennium, when a relatively unknown Ork warboss named Gozkul Mag Uruk Thraka launched his first assault against the hive world of Armageddon. This initial campaign, while ultimately unsuccessful, established Gozkul as the most dangerous Ork leader of the modern era and demonstrated his exceptional ability to learn from defeat and adapt his strategies accordingly. The warboss himself possessed physical and intellectual capabilities that exceeded those of typical Ork leaders, his massive frame enhanced by extensive cybernetic modifications that replaced portions of his skull damaged in earlier conflicts. Gozkul's rise to prominence began on the feral world of Urk, where his exceptional size and aggressive nature quickly established him as a dominant figure among the local Ork population. His early campaigns focused on uniting the scattered tribes that inhabited the planet's harsh surface, using a combination of personal combat prowess and tactical cunning that demonstrated his potential for larger-scale leadership. The cybernetic modifications that gave him his distinctive appearance were installed by the Mad Doc Grotznik following a near-fatal head injury, the crude surgery somehow enhancing his already formidable intellectual capabilities rather than diminishing them. The First War for Armageddon began when Gozkul's forces launched a massive assault against the planet's primary hive cities, their coordinated attacks demonstrating a level of strategic planning that caught Imperial defenders off guard. The initial Ork landings achieved complete tactical surprise, with multiple space hulks emerging from the warp simultaneously to deliver invasion forces directly to the planet's surface. The greenskin forces that poured from these massive vessels included not only traditional Ork infantry and vehicles, but also sophisticated siege engines and heavy weapons that demonstrated significant technological advancement compared to typical Ork equipment. The Imperial response to the invasion was hampered by political considerations and bureaucratic delays that allowed Gozkul's forces to establish secure beachheads and begin their assault on the Hive cities. The planetary defense forces, while numerous and well-equipped by Imperial Guard standards, lacked the experience and firepower necessary to contain an invasion of this magnitude. The Space Marines of the Salamanders chapter, led by their captain Pelaz Mirzan, provided the backbone of Imperial resistance, their expertise in urban warfare and siege operations proving crucial in preventing the complete collapse of the defensive perimeter. The Siege of Hive Acheron became the focal point of the First War, with Gozkul personally leading the assault against the massive arcology that housed millions of Imperial citizens. The Ork forces employed sophisticated siege tactics that combined traditional assault methods with innovative technological solutions, including massive drilling machines that burrowed through the Hive's foundation and aerial assault platforms that attacked the upper levels simultaneously. The defenders found themselves fighting a three-dimensional battle as Ork forces attacked from above, below, and through conventional approaches, their coordination suggesting a level of tactical sophistication that exceeded previous Ork campaigns. The intervention of the Space Wolves chapter under Logan Grimnar ultimately turned the tide of the First War, their arrival providing the additional firepower and tactical expertise necessary to break the Ork siege lines. The Space Wolves' preference for close-quarters combat proved particularly effective against Ork forces, their assault tactics allowing them to engage the Greenskins on terms that neutralized many of their numerical advantages. The final battle saw Grimnar himself leading a desperate assault against Gozkul's command center, though the Ork warboss managed to escape before the position was overrun. The aftermath of the First War for Armageddon revealed the true scope of Gozkul's strategic vision, as captured intelligence indicated that the assault had been intended as a probing attack rather than a full-scale invasion. The Ork forces had systematically gathered information about Imperial defensive capabilities, military response times, and logistical limitations, data that would prove invaluable in planning future operations. The withdrawal of Gozkul's forces was conducted in good order, with the majority of his military assets successfully evacuated to continue the campaign elsewhere. The Second War for Armageddon began several decades later, when Gozkul returned with forces that dwarfed his previous invasion, demonstrating his ability to learn from previous defeats and adapt his strategies accordingly. The Ork fleet that emerged from the warp included hundreds of vessels ranging from massive space hulks to purpose-built warships that incorporated lessons learned from the first campaign. The invasion force itself numbered in the millions, with Gozkul having spent the intervening years conquering and unifying Ork tribes across multiple star systems to create a military machine of unprecedented size and sophistication. The second invasion employed entirely different tactics, with Gozkul's forces launching simultaneous attacks against multiple targets to prevent Imperial forces from concentrating their defenses. The main assault focused on the industrial complexes that produced the weapons and equipment essential to Armageddon's defense, while secondary attacks targeted communication centers, spaceports, and other infrastructure that supported the planetary defense network. The coordination required to execute such a complex operation demonstrated tactical abilities that approached those of the most skilled Imperial commanders. The Imperial response to the second invasion was swift and overwhelming, with multiple Space Marine chapters deploying to Armageddon along with massive Imperial Guard reinforcements drawn from across the sector. The Blood Angels, Ultramarines, and Salamanders chapters formed the core of the Space Marine response, their combined expertise providing the tactical flexibility necessary to counter Gozkul's multi-pronged assault strategy. The Imperial Guard forces included veteran regiments from Cadia, Catachan, and Valhalla, their diverse specializations allowing Imperial commanders to deploy appropriate forces against different types of Ork threats. The Second War raged for years across Armageddon's surface, with neither side able to achieve decisive victory despite massive casualties on both sides. The conflict evolved into a grinding war of attrition that saw entire hive cities change hands multiple times, their populations either evacuated or caught in the crossfire between opposing forces. The industrial capacity of both sides was stretched to its limits, as the war consumed enormous quantities of equipment and ammunition, forcing both Imperial and Ork forces to adapt their tactics to account for supply shortages and equipment failures. Ghazghkull's personal involvement in the Second War was far more direct than in his first campaign, with the massive warboss leading assault forces in person and engaging Imperial champions in single combat on multiple occasions. His confrontations with Space Marine heroes became legendary, particularly his battles with Captain Yarrick of the Armageddon Steel Legion, whose cybernetic modifications and tactical brilliance made him one of the few Imperial commanders capable of matching the Ork warboss in both physical and intellectual combat. These personal duels took on symbolic significance that extended far beyond their immediate tactical impact, inspiring both sides to greater efforts while demonstrating the individual heroism that characterized the conflict. The conclusion of the Second War for Armageddon came not through decisive military victory, but through Ghazghkull's strategic decision to withdraw his forces before they could be completely destroyed by the mounting Imperial reinforcements. The Ork warboss had achieved his primary objectives of testing Imperial responses and gathering additional intelligence about human military capabilities, while simultaneously establishing his reputation as the most dangerous greenskin leader of the modern era. His withdrawal was conducted with the same tactical sophistication that had characterized the entire campaign, with the majority of his forces successfully evacuating to continue their war elsewhere in the galaxy. The Third War for Armageddon began when Ghazghkull returned once again, this time leading a force that represented the culmination of his decades of conquest and preparation. The invasion fleet included not only Ork vessels, but also captured Imperial ships that had been modified according to greenskin preferences, their hybrid design combining human engineering with Ork innovations to create warships that exceeded the capabilities of either parent technology. The ground forces that landed on Armageddon included veteran warriors from dozens of previous campaigns, their experience and equipment making them far more dangerous than typical Ork raiders. The scale of the third invasion dwarfed even the Second War, with Ghazghkull's forces numbering in the tens of millions and supported by war machines that rivaled Imperial Titans in size and destructive capability. The Ork assault strategy incorporated lessons learned from both previous campaigns, with simultaneous attacks launched against military, industrial, and civilian targets to maximize the disruption of Imperial defensive efforts. The coordination required to execute such a massive operation demonstrated command and control capabilities that approached those of the most sophisticated human military organizations. The most devastating conflict in Imperial history that did not directly involve chaos forces occurred during the 32nd millennium, when an Ork warlord known only as the Beast launched a campaign that brought greenskin forces to the very gates of Terra itself. This catastrophic invasion, remembered as the War of the Beast, demonstrated the terrifying potential that lay dormant within the Ork species when properly organized, and led by a specimen that approached the capabilities of the ancient Krork. The Beast himself was a creature of such immense size and power that Imperial records describe him as standing nearly 6 meters tall, his massive frame dwarfing even the largest Space Marine Primarchs. The origins of the Beast remain shrouded in mystery, with Imperial historians unable to determine where this exceptional specimen emerged or how he managed to unite the scattered Ork tribes across such a vast area of space. What is known is that his rise to power was meteoric, with reports of his activities first appearing in Imperial records only decades before his forces reached the Sol system. The speed with which he assembled his Wa forces suggested either exceptional organizational abilities or access to resources and technologies that exceeded those available to typical Ork leaders. The military machine that the beast assembled represented the largest Ork force in recorded history, with estimates suggesting that his Wa included hundreds of millions of warriors supported by war machines that incorporated technological innovations decades ahead of typical greenskin engineering. The Ork fleet that carried these forces included massive attack moons, artificial planetoids equipped with weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. These colossal constructs demonstrated engineering capabilities that approached those of the ancient Krork, their construction requiring resources and coordination that should have been beyond the reach of any Ork leader. The Imperial response to the beast's invasion was hampered by complacency and political divisions that had weakened humanity's military capabilities during the long peace that followed the Horus Heresy. The Space Marine chapters had been reduced to 1,000 warriors each, their numbers insufficient to counter a threat of this magnitude without massive support from other Imperial forces. The Imperial Navy, while still formidable, lacked the concentration of firepower necessary to engage the beast's attack moons in direct combat, forcing Imperial commanders to rely on unconventional tactics and desperate gambles. The Siege of Terra itself became the climactic confrontation of the War of the Beast, with Ork forces actually landing on humanity's homeworld for the first time since the species achieved spaceflight. The sight of greenskin warriors fighting in the shadow of the Imperial Palace sent shockwaves throughout the Imperium, demonstrating that even the most sacred and heavily defended worlds were not immune to Ork aggression. The defense of Terra required the mobilization of every available Imperial asset, from the Adeptus Custodes to the lowliest PDF trooper, in a desperate effort to prevent the fall of humanity's capital. The resolution of the War of the Beast came through a combination of Imperial heroism and Ork overconfidence, with a small force of Space Marines managing to infiltrate the Beast's command center and eliminate the massive warlord in single combat. The death of their leader caused the immediate collapse of the Wa forces, though the process of eliminating the remaining Ork strongholds required decades of continuous military operations across multiple sectors. The war's aftermath led to major reforms in Imperial military organization, including the creation of the Death Watch and significant increases in Space Marine recruitment quotas. Beyond these legendary campaigns, numerous lesser but still significant Was have plagued the galaxy throughout Imperial history, each demonstrating different aspects of Ork military potential and tactical innovation. Warboss Scarfang's campaigns in the Segmentum Pacificus during the 39th millennium showcased Ork abilities in void warfare, with his forces developing innovative boarding tactics that allowed them to capture and convert Imperial vessels with unprecedented efficiency. Scarfang himself was a master of naval combat, his understanding of three-dimensional tactics and fleet coordination rivaling that of experienced Imperial Navy admirals. The forces under Scarfang's command specialized in ship-to-ship combat and the capture of enemy vessels, their expertise in void warfare allowing them to build a fleet that combined the best features of multiple technological traditions. Captured Imperial vessels were modified according to Ork preferences, their weapon systems enhanced, and their armor reinforced while maintaining the sophisticated systems that made them effective in space combat. The resulting hybrid warships proved remarkably effective against both Imperial and alien opponents, their combination of human engineering and Ork innovation creating capabilities that exceeded either parent technology. Nasdreg Ug-Urdgrub's campaigns in the Eastern Fringe demonstrated Ork adaptability in fighting against Tyranid hive fleets, with his forces developing specialized tactics and equipment designed to counter the unique threats posed by the Great Devourer. Nasdreg's understanding of Tyranid biology and behavior allowed his forces to achieve tactical victories against hive fleet elements that had overwhelmed Imperial defenders, his success earning him recognition as one of the most tactically innovative Ork leaders of recent centuries. The weapons and vehicles developed by his mechboys incorporated anti-Tyranid features that proved effective against creatures that had evolved to counter conventional Imperial weapons. The freebooter captains who operate throughout the galaxy represent a different aspect of Ork military potential, their independent operations demonstrating the effectiveness of small-scale raiding forces led by experienced commanders. These piratical leaders typically command relatively small forces consisting of a few ships and several hundred warriors, but their mobility and tactical flexibility allow them to achieve results that would be impossible for larger, more conventional forces. Captain Badruk and his Flash Gits exemplify this approach, their raids targeting high-value Imperial installations and shipping lanes with surgical precision that maximizes damage while minimizing their own casualties. The emergence of Gazkul Mag Uruk-Thraka as the most formidable Ork warboss in millennia began not with grand proclamations or spectacular victories, but with a crude surgical procedure performed in the ramshackle operating theater of Mad Doc Grotznik on the feral world of Urk. The young Ork who would eventually terrorize the Imperium across multiple sectors had already distinguished himself as an exceptionally large and aggressive specimen, his natural size and ferocity marking him as potential leadership material among his clan. However, it was the catastrophic head injury he sustained during a particularly vicious tribal conflict that would ultimately transform him from a promising warrior into something far more dangerous. The projectile that nearly killed the future prophet of Gork and Mork penetrated deep into his skull, fragmenting bone and damaging brain tissue in ways that should have proven fatal to any normal Ork. Lesser specimens would have died from such trauma, their primitive nervous systems unable to compensate for the massive disruption to their cranial structure. Gazkul's exceptional constitution allowed him to survive the initial injury, though he remained unconscious for days while his clan debated whether to finish him off or attempt some form of treatment. The decision to transport him to Mad Doc Grotznik's facility proved to be one of the most consequential choices in recent galactic history. Grotznik's surgical techniques defied conventional understanding of medical practice, combining salvaged Imperial medical equipment with Ork intuitive understanding of biology to create procedures that achieved results through methods that would horrify trained physicians. The Mad Doc's approach to treating Gazkul's injuries involved extensive use of crude cybernetic implants, metal plates, and chemical stimulants that somehow restored function to damaged neural pathways while simultaneously enhancing the patient's cognitive capabilities. The surgery itself took place over several days, with Grotznik working continuously to rebuild portions of Gazkul's skull using a combination of metal plating and organic grafts. The cybernetic modifications installed during this marathon surgical session included neural interface components salvaged from Imperial Guard equipment, their sophisticated electronics somehow integrating with Ork nervous system architecture, despite the obvious biological incompatibilities. Grotznik's understanding of these systems operated on an intuitive level rather than through formal technical knowledge, his genetic programming as a pain boy providing the insights necessary to make the hybrid technology function properly. The resulting implants created direct connections between Gazkul's brain and external systems, allowing him to interface with technology in ways that exceeded the capabilities of unmodified Orks. The recovery period following the surgery revealed the true extent of the changes that had occurred within Gazkul's enhanced cranium. The massive Ork began experiencing vivid dreams and waking visions that he interpreted as direct communications from Gork and Mork themselves, the twin deities of the Ork pantheon speaking to him through the psychic amplification provided by his cybernetic implants. These prophetic experiences provided him with strategic insights and tactical knowledge that far exceeded his previous capabilities, transforming him from a competent tribal leader into a military genius capable of coordinating campaigns across multiple star systems. The content of these divine revelations focused on Gazkul's destiny as the chosen champion of the Ork gods, tasked with uniting the scattered greenskin tribes under a single banner and leading them in the greatest war the galaxy had ever witnessed. The visions showed him commanding vast armies of Orks, their green tide sweeping across human worlds and alien territories, alike in an unstoppable wave of conquest and destruction. These prophetic images were accompanied by detailed tactical information about enemy weaknesses, strategic opportunities, and the locations of resources necessary to sustain massive military campaigns. The psychological impact of these experiences was profound, instilling in Gazkul an unshakable confidence in his own destiny and the righteousness of his cause. The certainty that he was acting as the instrument of divine will eliminated any doubt or hesitation that might have hampered his decision-making, allowing him to commit fully to ambitious plans that other leaders might have considered too risky. This absolute faith in his mission became one of his greatest assets, inspiring fanatical loyalty among his followers while intimidating enemies who recognized the dangerous combination of intelligence and religious fervor that drove his actions. The first major demonstration of Gazkul's enhanced capabilities came during his systematic conquest of the various Ork tribes that inhabited Urk, a campaign that showcased his ability to combine traditional Ork aggression with sophisticated strategic planning. Rather than simply challenging rival leaders to single combat, he employed complex political maneuvering and tactical deception to isolate his enemies and defeat them piecemeal. His forces would negotiate temporary alliances with some tribes while simultaneously preparing attacks against others, creating situations where his enemies faced overwhelming odds while his own casualties remained minimal. The speed and efficiency of Gazkul's consolidation of power on Urk impressed even veteran Ork observers, who had never witnessed such systematic and methodical conquest by a greenskin leader. His ability to maintain discipline among his forces during extended campaigns demonstrated command capabilities that approached those of the most skilled Imperial generals, while his talent for logistics and resource management ensured that his growing army remained well-equipped and properly supplied. The tribal warriors who joined his cause found themselves part of a military organization that functioned with unprecedented efficiency and coordination. The technological innovations that emerged from Gazkul's workshops during this period reflected his enhanced understanding of engineering principles and his ability to communicate complex technical concepts to his mechboys. The weapons and vehicles produced under his direction incorporated design features that combined traditional Ork reliability with sophisticated improvements that increased their effectiveness against better-equipped opponents. His personal equipment included custom-built power armor that integrated seamlessly with his cybernetic implants, creating a man-machine interface that amplified both his physical capabilities and his command authority. The psychic phenomena that surrounded Gazkul during his rise to power exceeded those typically associated with successful Ork leaders, suggesting that his cybernetic modifications had somehow enhanced his natural connection to the Wa field. His presence on the battlefield inspired nearby Orks to fight with exceptional ferocity and coordination, their individual capabilities enhanced by the psychic energy that radiated from their prophetic leader. Enemy forces reported experiencing feelings of dread and despair when facing Gazkul's armies, as if the very air around the Ork forces had become charged with malevolent energy. The First War for Armageddon began when Gazkul's expanding influence attracted the attention of Imperial authorities, who recognized the threat posed by his growing power base and attempted to contain his forces before they could achieve critical mass. The Imperial response was hampered by bureaucratic delays and political considerations that allowed the Ork warboss to complete his preparations and launch his assault at the time and place of his choosing. The invasion fleet that emerged from the warp around Armageddon represented the culmination of years of careful planning and resource accumulation, its composition and deployment demonstrating strategic thinking that caught Imperial defenders completely off guard. The space hulks that delivered Gazkul's invasion force to Armageddon's surface had been extensively modified during their journey through the warp, their crude construction enhanced with additional weapon systems and troop transport facilities that maximized their effectiveness as assault platforms. The coordination required to navigate multiple space hulks simultaneously through warp space and emerge at precisely the right coordinates demonstrated navigational skills that exceeded those of most human ship captains. The timing of the assault was carefully calculated to coincide with periods of reduced Imperial patrol activity, allowing the invasion force to achieve complete tactical surprise. The initial landings on Armageddon showcased Gozkul's ability to coordinate complex multi-pronged assaults that struck simultaneously at multiple strategic targets across the planet's surface. His forces employed sophisticated reconnaissance techniques to identify key infrastructure nodes and defensive positions, their intelligence-gathering operations demonstrating capabilities that rivaled those of Imperial Guard special forces. The assault troops that emerged from the space hulks included specialized units trained for specific mission types, from siege specialists equipped with heavy weapons to infiltration teams capable of operating behind enemy lines. The siege tactics employed during the assault on Hive Acheron revealed the extent of Gozkul's military education, his forces utilizing techniques that combined traditional Ork aggression with innovative approaches to urban warfare. The massive drilling machines that burrowed through the Hive's foundation represented significant technological achievements, their construction requiring advanced engineering knowledge and sophisticated manufacturing capabilities. The coordination between surface assaults and underground operations demonstrated three-dimensional tactical thinking that exceeded the capabilities of most Ork leaders. The psychological warfare component of Gozkul's campaign proved equally sophisticated, with his forces employing propaganda broadcasts and terror tactics designed to demoralize Imperial defenders and encourage civilian populations to surrender rather than resist. The Ork warboss understood that military victory required more than simple battlefield success, recognizing that the complete conquest of a heavily populated world demanded the cooperation, or at least the passive acceptance of its inhabitants. His treatment of captured civilians was calculated to demonstrate both the futility of resistance and the benefits of cooperation, creating conditions that facilitated the administrative control of conquered territories. The withdrawal of Gozkul's forces at the conclusion of the First War demonstrated strategic discipline that surprised Imperial observers, who had expected the Ork leader to fight to the death rather than accept tactical defeat. The evacuation was conducted with military precision that preserved the majority of his forces and equipment while denying Imperial forces the decisive victory they had anticipated. Intelligence gathered during the campaign was systematically analyzed and incorporated into planning for future operations, demonstrating an institutional learning capability that was unprecedented among Ork military organizations. The decades between the First and Second Wars for Armageddon witnessed Gozkul's transformation from a regional threat into a galaxy-spanning menace, his forces conducting campaigns across multiple sectors while systematically building the resources necessary for an even larger assault. His ability to coordinate operations across vast distances demonstrated command and control capabilities that approached those of Imperial High Command, while his talent for inspiring loyalty among diverse Ork populations created a unified military culture that transcended traditional clan boundaries. The technological innovations that emerged from his expanding network of workshops and factories represented significant advances in Ork engineering capabilities. The second invasion of Armageddon revealed the full extent of Gozkul's strategic evolution, his forces employing tactics and equipment that incorporated lessons learned from the first campaign while demonstrating entirely new capabilities developed during the intervening years. The simultaneous multi-target assault strategy prevented Imperial forces from concentrating their defenses, while the sophisticated logistics network that supported his operations allowed him to sustain combat operations at a pace that exhausted his enemies. The personal leadership he provided during critical battles inspired his forces to achieve tactical victories that should have been impossible given their equipment limitations. The legendary confrontations between Gozkul and Commissar Yarrick during the Second War elevated both combatants to mythical status within their respective military traditions, their personal duels serving as focal points for the broader conflict between their civilizations. The mutual respect that developed between these exceptional leaders transcended the racial hatred that typically characterized human-orc conflicts, creating a rivalry that was based on professional admiration rather than simple bloodlust. Their encounters became case studies in individual heroism and tactical brilliance that influenced military doctrine on both sides of the conflict. The strategic withdrawal that concluded the Second War demonstrated Gozkul's maturation as a military leader, his decision to preserve his forces for future operations rather than pursuing immediate tactical gains, showing a level of strategic thinking that few Orc leaders had ever achieved. The evacuation was conducted under intense Imperial pressure, yet the majority of his forces successfully escaped to continue their campaigns elsewhere in the galaxy. The intelligence and experience gained during the extended conflict provided valuable insights that would inform his future strategic planning and tactical innovations. The current phase of Gozkul's career has seen him embrace his role as the prophet of Gork and Mork with increasing fervor, his religious authority among Orc populations rivaling his military reputation in its ability to inspire fanatical devotion. His proclamations regarding the coming Great Wa that will unite all greenskins under his leadership have attracted followers from across the galaxy, creating a movement that transcends traditional clan loyalties and regional boundaries. The scale of forces now gathering under his banner represents the largest concentration of Orc military power since the War of the Beast, with estimates suggesting that his current Wa includes tens of millions of warriors supported by technological resources that approach those of a major Imperial sector. The technological sophistication of Gozkul's current forces reflects decades of continuous innovation and resource accumulation, with his mechboys producing weapons and vehicles that incorporate the best features of multiple alien technologies. The Gargants and super heavy vehicles that form the backbone of his assault forces demonstrate engineering capabilities that rival those of Imperial Titans, while his naval assets include both captured human vessels and purpose-built Orc warships that combine the advantages of both technological traditions. The coordination required to maintain and operate such a diverse array of equipment demonstrates logistical capabilities that exceed those of most human military organizations. The divine pantheon that governs Orc spiritual life consists of twin deities whose brutal simplicity perfectly mirrors the crude psychology of their worshippers. Gork and Mork represent the fundamental aspects of Orc nature distilled into their purest forms, embodying the violence and cunning that drive greenskin civilization across the galaxy. These gods exist not as distant, incomprehensible entities, but as immediate, tangible forces that manifest through every act of Orc aggression and every moment of battlefield inspiration. Their influence permeates Orc society so completely that the distinction between religious devotion and military doctrine becomes meaningless, creating a warrior culture where worship and warfare are indistinguishable activities. The physical manifestations of Gork and Mork in Orc religious imagery reflect their dual nature as complementary aspects of the same fundamental force. Gork appears as a massive green skin giant whose enormous frame bristles with crude weapons and primitive armor, his appearance emphasizing raw physical power and direct confrontation. His traditional depictions show him wielding enormous clubs or primitive firearms, his stance aggressive and his expression displaying the mindless fury that characterizes Orc combat behavior. Mork, by contrast, is typically portrayed as equally large but more cunning in appearance, his weapons more sophisticated, and his posture suggesting intelligence and planning rather than simple brutality. The theological distinction between these twin deities centers on their approach to violence rather than their fundamental nature, with Orc religious doctrine attempting to categorize the different methods by which enemies can be defeated and territories conquered. Gork represents brutally cunning warfare, the application of intelligence and planning in service of overwhelming force. His domain encompasses the strategic thinking that allows orc armies to identify enemy weaknesses and exploit them through coordinated assaults. Mork embodies cunningly brutal tactics, the use of deception and misdirection to create opportunities for devastating attacks. His influence guides orcs who prefer ambush tactics, surprise assaults, and the psychological warfare that demoralizes enemies before physical combat begins. The endless theological debate that occupies orc religious thinkers regarding the precise nature of their gods reflects the species' fundamental inability to comprehend subtle distinctions or abstract concepts. Orc weirdboys and other spiritual leaders engage in heated arguments about whether Gork is brutally cunning or cunningly brutal, their discussions often degenerating into physical confrontations that settle doctrinal disputes through the application of superior fighting ability. These theological conflicts serve important social functions within orc communities, providing outlets for competitive aggression while reinforcing the central importance of violence in all aspects of greenskin culture. The practical implications of this religious confusion extend far beyond academic debate, influencing tactical decisions and strategic planning throughout orc military organizations. Commanders who favor Gork's approach typically employ straightforward assault tactics that rely on superior numbers and firepower to overwhelm enemy positions, their battle plans emphasizing direct confrontation and the systematic application of force. Leaders who align themselves with Mork's philosophy prefer more sophisticated approaches that incorporate deception, flanking maneuvers, and psychological warfare designed to confuse and demoralize their opponents before the main assault begins. The worship practices that characterize orc religious observance bear little resemblance to the contemplative rituals found in other species' spiritual traditions, instead taking the form of violent competitions and combat demonstrations that celebrate the martial virtues embodied by their twin gods. Orc religious ceremonies typically involve elaborate fighting tournaments where warriors compete to demonstrate their prowess with various weapons and combat techniques. These contests serve multiple purposes within greenskin society, identifying the most skilled fighters while providing entertainment and reinforcing social hierarchies through displays of superior combat ability. The construction of massive idols and totems represents one of the most visible expressions of orc religious devotion, with communities dedicating enormous resources to creating monuments that honor Gork and Mork through displays of artistic brutality. These structures typically consist of crude but imposing sculptures fashioned from salvaged metal, scavenged materials, and the bones of defeated enemies. The largest idols can reach heights of several hundred meters, their construction requiring the coordinated efforts of entire clans working together to assemble frameworks capable of supporting their massive weight. The artistic style employed in these religious monuments reflects orc aesthetic preferences for intimidating imagery and functional decoration, with the idols serving as both spiritual focal points and practical defensive installations. The twin god statues often incorporate functional weapon systems, their extended arms mounting artillery pieces or missile launchers that can engage enemy forces while simultaneously serving as objects of religious veneration. The construction techniques used in these projects demonstrate sophisticated engineering capabilities, with orc mechboys employing advanced structural principles to create stable foundations capable of supporting weapons that would normally require dedicated gun emplacements. The most impressive expressions of orc religious architecture take the form of gargants, massive walking war machines that serve as mobile temples dedicated to Gork and Mork, while simultaneously functioning as devastating weapons of war. These colossal constructs represent the ultimate fusion of orc religious devotion and military pragmatism, their towering frames designed to inspire awe in both allies and enemies while delivering firepower that can level entire city blocks. The construction of a gargant requires years of preparation and the accumulation of vast quantities of materials, making these projects major undertakings that unite entire orc communities in common purpose. The religious significance of gargants extends beyond their practical military applications to encompass their role as walking manifestations of divine power, their presence on battlefields serving to channel the favor of Gork and Mork directly into combat situations. The crews that operate these massive machines undergo extensive ritualistic preparation, their training incorporating religious ceremonies designed to ensure proper spiritual alignment with the machine's divine purpose. The weapon systems mounted on gargants often receive individual names and religious consecration, their destructive capabilities viewed as direct expressions of divine will rather than simple technological achievements. The spiritual hierarchy within Ork religious organizations operates according to principles that emphasize practical demonstration of divine favor rather than theological knowledge or ritual expertise. Ork priests, known as weirdboys when they possess psychic abilities, achieve their positions through displays of supernatural power that convince their communities of their special connection to Gork and Mork. These religious leaders often experience violent psychic episodes during which they channel divine energy in spectacular displays that can level buildings or incinerate enemy formations, their abilities serving as tangible proof of their gods' continued interest in Ork affairs. The role of weirdboys in Ork religious practice extends beyond simple ceremonial functions to encompass their critical importance in generating and focusing the Wa energy that makes Ork technology function properly. These unfortunate individuals serve as living conduits for the collective psychic force generated by large gatherings of Orks, their bodies absorbing and channeling energies that would kill normal greenskins. The religious significance of this process cannot be overstated, as Ork communities view their weirdboys as direct intermediaries between the physical world and the divine realm inhabited by their twin gods. The psychic phenomena associated with weirdboy activities demonstrate the immediate and tangible nature of Ork religious experience, with divine intervention manifesting as measurable changes in physical reality rather than abstract spiritual benefits. During major religious ceremonies, experienced weirdboys can channel sufficient Wa energy to create localized reality distortions that affect everything from equipment functionality to the fundamental laws of physics. These displays of supernatural power serve to reinforce Ork faith in their gods while providing practical benefits that improve their military effectiveness and technological capabilities. The afterlife beliefs that characterize Ork religious doctrine reflect their fundamental preoccupation with warfare and their inability to conceive of existence without constant conflict and competition. Ork mythology describes the realm of Gork and Mork as an eternal battlefield where the spirits of dead warriors continue fighting for the entertainment of their gods, their combat prowess in the physical world determining their status and equipment in the afterlife. This vision of posthumous existence serves to motivate Ork warriors to achieve greater feats of violence and destruction, as their performance in life directly influences their eternal fate. The specific details of Ork afterlife mythology vary considerably between different clans and regions, though all versions emphasize the continuation of warfare and the importance of individual combat achievement in determining spiritual status. Some traditions describe elaborate hierarchies of warrior spirits organized according to their battlefield accomplishments, while others focus on endless tournaments and competitions that allow the dead to continue proving their worth. The common thread connecting all these beliefs is the assumption that death represents merely a transition to a different form of combat, rather than an end to existence or a fundamental change in the nature of consciousness. The influence of these afterlife beliefs on Ork military behavior cannot be overstated, as the promise of eternal warfare provides powerful motivation for warriors facing dangerous combat situations. Orks who believe they will continue fighting in the realm of their gods show remarkable fearlessness in battle, their willingness to accept death in pursuit of victory, often surprising enemies who expect self-preservation instincts to limit greenskin aggression. This religious fatalism contributes significantly to Ork military effectiveness, as their forces can sustain casualty rates that would break the morale of more rational species. The generation of Wa energy through religious devotion represents one of the most significant aspects of Ork spiritual practice, with the collective faith of greenskin communities directly contributing to their military capabilities and technological effectiveness. The psychic field that emerges from large gatherings of orcs draws much of its power from their shared religious beliefs, their absolute certainty in the favor of Gork and Mork translating into measurable improvements in equipment performance and combat effectiveness. This phenomenon creates a feedback loop where military success reinforces religious faith, which in turn generates greater psychic energy that enables even more impressive battlefield achievements. The relationship between religious observance and military effectiveness becomes most apparent during major war campaigns, when millions of orcs united under charismatic leaders generate psychic fields of unprecedented power. The collective devotion of these massive forces creates reality distortions that allow their crude technology to function at levels that should be impossible given their construction methods and available materials. Weapons that appear to be nothing more than scrap metal welded together achieve accuracy and destructive power that rivals sophisticated Imperial equipment, while vehicles built from salvaged components demonstrate reliability and performance that exceeds their theoretical capabilities. The prophetic traditions within Orc religious culture focus on the eventual coming of a great leader who will unite all greenskins under the banner of Gork and Mork, leading them in a final war that will sweep across the galaxy and establish Orc dominance over all other species. These prophecies typically describe this chosen champion as a warrior of exceptional size and intelligence, whose connection to the twin gods will grant him supernatural abilities and the charisma necessary to command the loyalty of billions of orcs. The religious significance of these predictions extends beyond simple wishful thinking to encompass genuine belief in the inevitable triumph of orc civilization over its enemies. The identification of potential prophetic figures within contemporary orc society generates considerable religious and political excitement, with successful warbosses often attracting followers who believe they represent the fulfillment of ancient prophecies. Gozkul Mag Uruk Thraka's rise to prominence has been accompanied by widespread speculation about his possible role as the prophesied champion, his exceptional capabilities, and religious visions lending credence to claims that he enjoys special divine favor. The religious movement that has grown around his leadership incorporates traditional orc spiritual practices with newer elements that emphasize his unique connection to Gork and Mork. The ritual scarification and body modification, practices that characterize orc religious devotion, serve both spiritual and practical functions within greenskin society, with warriors using permanent alterations to their physical appearance to demonstrate their commitment to their gods while simultaneously intimidating their enemies. These modifications typically involve the creation of elaborate patterns of scars that chronicle individual combat achievements, their designs incorporating religious symbols and clan markings that identify the bearer's spiritual allegiances and military accomplishments. The most dedicated warriors undergo extensive surgical procedures that replace portions of their bodies with mechanical components, their cybernetic enhancements serving as visible proof of their willingness to sacrifice comfort and convenience in pursuit of greater combat effectiveness. The religious significance of these body modifications extends beyond simple decoration to encompass their role in channeling divine energy and improving the bearer's connection to the Wa field. Orc spiritual leaders often claim that properly consecrated scars and implants can enhance a warrior's combat abilities by creating physical conduits for supernatural power, their beliefs supported by observable improvements in the performance of heavily modified individuals. The psychological impact of these modifications on both the bearers and their enemies contributes significantly to their effectiveness, as the intimidating appearance of scarred and cybernetically enhanced orc warriors can demoralize opponents before combat even begins. The seasonal religious observances that punctuate orc cultural calendars typically coincide with major military campaigns or significant astronomical events, their timing designed to maximize the psychic energy generated by community-wide participation in religious activities. These celebrations often involve elaborate competitions and demonstrations of martial prowess, with individual warriors competing for recognition and prizes, while contributing to the collective spiritual energy that benefits their entire community. The largest religious festivals can attract participants from multiple clans and regions, their gatherings generating fields powerful enough to affect the functionality of technology across entire star systems. The organizational structure of Ork military forces reflects their species' fundamental approach to problem solving through violence and intimidation, creating armies that appear chaotic to outside observers, but operate according to deeply ingrained patterns of dominance and tribal loyalty. At the foundation of every Ork military formation lies the basic mob, a collection of boys who have banded together under the leadership of the largest and most aggressive among them. These mobs typically consist of 10 to 20 warriors armed with whatever weapons they can acquire, their equipment ranging from crude choppas and sluggas to more exotic weapons looted from defeated enemies or traded from successful raids. The composition of individual boys' mobs varies considerably depending on their clan affiliation, regional preferences, and the personal inclinations of their leaders. Goth mobs favor close combat weapons and tend to charge directly into enemy lines with minimal regard for tactical subtlety, their black painted armor and skull decorations serving to intimidate opponents while reflecting their clan's death-obsessed culture. Bad Moon mobs display their wealth through superior equipment and elaborate decorations, their yellow painted gear often incorporating precious metals and gems that serve no functional purpose beyond demonstrating their owner's economic status. Evil Sunts mobs emphasize mobility and speed, their red-painted equipment designed for rapid movement across battlefields and hit-and-run tactics that exploit their superior maneuverability. The leadership structure within individual mobs operates according to simple dominance hierarchies, with the largest and most successful Ork naturally assuming command responsibilities through displays of superior fighting ability. These mob leaders, known as boss knobs, maintain their authority through a combination of physical intimidation and tactical competence, their positions remaining secure only as long as they can demonstrate continued effectiveness in combat situations. The relationship between boss knobs and their subordinates resembles that between pack leaders and their followers, with loyalty based on respect for proven capability rather than abstract concepts of duty or honor. The weapons carried by individual boys reflect both their personal preferences and the equipment available through their clan's supply networks, creating a diverse array of armaments that would appear completely random to military observers from more organized species. The iconic choppa serves as the primary melee weapon for most Ork infantry, its crude construction concealing sophisticated metallurgical techniques that produce blades capable of cutting through ceramite armor. These weapons typically measure between 60 and 90 centimeters in length, their weight and balance optimized for the powerful overhead strikes that characterize Ork close combat techniques. The handles are often wrapped in leather or cloth to improve grip, while the blades themselves may feature serrated edges, hooks, or other modifications designed to inflict maximum damage on unarmored targets. Sluggas represent the standard ranged weapon for Ork infantry forces, their simple design consisting of a crude barrel attached to a firing mechanism that launches projectiles through the application of explosive force. These weapons fire a variety of ammunition types, from properly manufactured bullets to random pieces of scrap metal that achieve lethal velocity through sheer kinetic energy. The reliability of sluggas depends more on robust construction than precision engineering, with mechboys designing weapons that can function despite exposure to extreme conditions and minimal maintenance. The distinctive sound produced by slugga fire, a combination of explosive report and mechanical cycling, serves to intimidate enemies while providing audible confirmation of weapon function to their operators. The specialized units that support basic boys mobs reflect the diverse tactical requirements of modern warfare and the natural tendency of Ork society to produce individuals with specific skills and inclinations. Knobs represent the elite warriors within Ork military formations, their enhanced size and combat experience making them natural leaders and assault specialists. These veterans typically stand a head taller than regular boys and bear the scars, cybernetic implants, and elaborate equipment that mark them as survivors of numerous major battles. Their weapons often incorporate power fields or other advanced technologies looted from defeated enemies, while their armor consists of layered plates that provide superior protection without significantly restricting mobility. The transition from boy to nob occurs gradually as individual warriors prove their worth through repeated combat success, their growing reputation attracting followers and better equipment, while earning recognition from higher-ranking orcs. This process lacks formal promotion ceremonies or standardized requirements, instead operating through the natural selection pressures that characterize all aspects of greenskin society. Nobs who fail to maintain their reputations through continued battlefield success quickly find themselves demoted back to regular boy status, as orc military culture recognizes only current performance rather than past achievements. Meganobs represent the ultimate evolution of orc infantry forces, their massive frames encased in crude but effective power armor that transforms them into walking tanks capable of engaging enemy vehicles in direct combat. The construction of mega armor requires significant resources and technical expertise, with each suit representing months of work by skilled mechboys using the finest materials available to their clan. The armor itself consists of multiple layers of reinforced plating powered by compact fusion reactors, their weight requiring the enhanced strength of fully mature nobs to operate effectively. The integrated weapon systems typically include power claws capable of tearing through vehicle armor and heavy caliber guns that can engage targets at extended ranges. The psychological impact of meganobs on both allies and enemies cannot be overstated, as their imposing appearance and obvious combat capability inspire confidence among friendly forces while demoralizing opponents who must face these mechanical monstrosities in battle. The distinctive sound of mega armor servos and the ground-shaking impact of their footsteps announce their presence long before they become visible, creating an atmosphere of dread that often causes enemy units to break and run before combat even begins. The tactical flexibility provided by these units allows orc commanders to assault heavily fortified positions that would be impossible for regular infantry to overcome. The heavy support elements that provide fire support for orc infantry formations consist primarily of specialized units armed with weapons designed to engage enemy vehicles and fortifications at extended ranges. Lutas represent one of the most common heavy weapons teams, their obsession with acquiring and employing captured enemy equipment making them natural choices for operating sophisticated weapon systems. These specialists typically carry heavy weapons looted from defeated Imperial Guard units or salvaged from destroyed vehicles, their expertise with alien technology allowing them to maintain and operate equipment that would be beyond the capabilities of regular boys. The weapons employed by Lutas vary considerably depending on what equipment they have managed to acquire through battlefield salvage or trading with other units. Heavy bolters represent popular choices due to their reliability and the widespread availability of ammunition, while lascannons provide the armor-penetrating capability necessary to engage enemy vehicles effectively. Some Lutas prefer more exotic weapons such as plasma cannons or missile launchers, their operation requiring greater technical skill but offering superior destructive potential against appropriate targets. The diversity of equipment within Luta squads creates logistical challenges but provides tactical flexibility that allows them to adapt to changing battlefield conditions. Tankbustas specialize in anti-vehicle warfare, their equipment and tactics specifically designed to destroy enemy armor through the application of overwhelming firepower at close range. These specialists typically carry rockets, crude but effective anti-tank weapons that combine orc engineering principles with salvaged Imperial technology to create missiles capable of penetrating heavy armor. The rocket launchers themselves appear to be little more than metal tubes with crude firing mechanisms, yet they consistently achieve penetration rates that rival sophisticated Imperial anti-tank weapons. The warheads typically consist of high explosive charges surrounded by metal fragments, their detonation creating devastating effects against both armored vehicles and infantry formations. The tactical employment of tankbustas requires careful coordination with other units, as their specialized role makes them vulnerable to enemy infantry while limiting their effectiveness against targets other than vehicles. Successful tankbusta operations typically involve infiltration techniques that allow the specialists to approach enemy armor undetected, their attacks coordinated to achieve maximum surprise and overwhelming local firepower concentration. The psychological impact of successful tankbusta attacks extends beyond the immediate destruction of enemy vehicles to encompass the demoralization of enemy crews who realize that their armor provides no protection against determined Ork anti-tank specialists. Flashgits represent an entirely different category of heavy weapons specialists, their mercenary nature and emphasis on individual glory setting them apart from the more traditional clan-based military units. These flamboyant warriors operate as independent contractors who sell their services to the highest bidder, their loyalty extending only as far as their current payment arrangements. The weapons carried by flashgits represent the pinnacle of Ork small arms technology, with each specialist carrying a unique snaz gun that incorporates the finest materials and most advanced features available to greenskin engineering. These weapons often feature multiple barrels, exotic ammunition types, and elaborate decorative elements that serve both functional and aesthetic purposes. The construction of snaz guns requires exceptional skill and access to rare materials, with each weapon representing a significant investment of time and resources by master mechboys. The firing mechanisms typically incorporate multiple ammunition feeds that allow the operator to select from various projectile types depending on the tactical situation, while the barrels may feature rifling, compensators, and other modifications that improve accuracy and reduce recoil. The most elaborate snaz guns incorporate power sources that enable the use of energy-based ammunition, their operation requiring sophisticated targeting systems and cooling mechanisms that push Ork technology to its limits. The mercenary lifestyle of flashgits creates unique challenges and opportunities within Ork society, as their independent status allows them to operate outside traditional clan hierarchies, while simultaneously limiting their access to the support networks that sustain conventional military units. These specialists must maintain their own equipment, acquire their own ammunition, and negotiate their own contracts, creating a level of self-sufficiency that would be impossible for warriors dependent on clan resources. The reputation and equipment of individual flashgits determine their market value, with the most successful mercenaries commanding premium rates for their services, while less capable operators struggle to find employment. The vehicle component of Ork military forces reflects their species' love of loud, fast machines and their intuitive understanding of mechanical principles, creating a diverse array of transports and fighting vehicles that combine crude construction with surprising effectiveness. Trucks serve as the primary infantry transport for most Ork forces, their simple design consisting of a reinforced chassis mounting an oversized engine and an open cargo area capable of carrying a squad of warriors along with their equipment. The construction techniques used in truck assembly emphasize durability and ease of repair over comfort or fuel efficiency, with mechboys designing vehicles that can continue operating despite damage that would immobilize more sophisticated transports. The engines that power Ork vehicles represent masterpieces of intuitive engineering, their crude but effective design producing enormous amounts of power while running on virtually any combustible fuel. These power plants typically generate far more noise than strictly necessary for their operation, their distinctive roar serving both to intimidate enemies and to satisfy Ork psychological requirements for proper vehicle behavior. The fuel systems can process everything from refined promethium to fermented organic waste, their robust construction allowing them to extract energy from materials that would destroy more delicate Imperial engines. Warbiges represent the other extreme of Ork vehicle design philosophy, their emphasis on speed and maneuverability, making them ideal platforms for reconnaissance and fast attack operations. These lightweight vehicles sacrifice armor protection and cargo capacity in favor of maximum velocity and agility, their construction typically featuring minimal bodywork and exposed mechanical components that reduce weight while facilitating field maintenance. The weapons mounted on warbages tend toward rapid-fire systems that can engage targets while the vehicle maintains high speed, though some variants carry heavier armaments that require the vehicle to stop before firing effectively. The crew requirements for Ork vehicles vary considerably depending on their size and complexity, with smaller machines typically operated by single individuals, while larger vehicles require multiple specialists to function effectively. Truck drivers represent some of the most skilled operators in Ork forces, their ability to navigate rough terrain at high speed while avoiding enemy fire requiring reflexes and spatial awareness that exceed those of typical boys. These specialists often modify their vehicles extensively, adding performance enhancements and decorative elements that reflect their personal preferences and clan affiliations. Battle wagons and gun wagons represent the heavy end of Ork ground vehicle technology, their massive size and extensive armament making them mobile fortresses capable of supporting major assault operations. The construction of these vehicles requires significant resources and technical expertise, with their assembly typically involving multiple mechboy workshops working in coordination to complete the various subsystems. The armor protection on these machines consists of multiple layers of reinforced plating that can withstand direct hits from anti-tank weapons, while their weapon systems include everything from multiple heavy bolters to massive cannons capable of engaging enemy vehicles at extended ranges. The air support component of Ork military forces operates according to principles that combine their love of speed and violence with their characteristic disregard for safety and conventional aerodynamic theory. Dakajets represent the primary fighter aircraft in most Ork air forces, their design emphasizing firepower and aggressive appearance over sophisticated flight characteristics or pilot survival features. These aircraft typically mount multiple heavy weapons in fixed forward firing positions, their tactics involving high-speed attack runs that rely on overwhelming firepower rather than maneuverability to achieve victory. The construction techniques used in Dakajet assembly produce aircraft that appear crude but demonstrate surprising effectiveness in air-to-air and air-to-ground combat roles. Burna bombers serve as the primary ground attack aircraft for Ork forces, their specialized equipment designed to deliver devastating firepower against enemy infantry and light vehicles. These aircraft typically carry large quantities of incendiary weapons and explosives, their bombing runs creating widespread destruction that can break enemy formations and destroy defensive positions. The accuracy of Burna bomber attacks depends more on the quantity of ordnance delivered than precision targeting, with Ork pilots preferring to saturate target areas with explosives rather than attempting surgical strikes against specific objectives. The pilots who operate Ork aircraft, known as flyboys, represent a specialized caste within Greenskin society whose skills and temperament make them natural choices for aerial warfare. These individuals typically display enhanced spatial awareness and reflexes that allow them to operate complex machines while engaging in high-speed combat, their abilities often enhanced by cybernetic modifications that improve their reaction times and coordination. The training required to produce competent flybys operates through practical experience rather than formal instruction, with aspiring pilots learning their skills through increasingly dangerous flight exercises that eliminate those lacking the necessary capabilities. The maintenance requirements for Ork aircraft create unique challenges within their military organization, as the complex systems required for flight operations demand higher levels of technical expertise than ground-based equipment. Specialized mechboy teams work exclusively on aircraft maintenance, their workshops equipped with lifting equipment and specialized tools necessary for working on flying machines. The parts and materials required for aircraft maintenance often prove difficult to acquire through normal salvage operations, forcing air units to establish trading relationships with other Ork factions or to target specific enemy installations that contain the components they need. The galaxy's long and blood-soaked history contains countless examples of Ork leaders whose exceptional capabilities and ruthless ambition elevated them above the endless masses of their green-skinned brethren. These legendary figures represent the pinnacle of what the degraded Krork genome can still produce when circumstances align to create the perfect storm of genetic potential, environmental pressure, and sheer bloody-minded determination. Their campaigns have shaped Imperial military doctrine, forced the development of new defensive strategies, and demonstrated the terrifying potential that lies dormant within the Ork species when properly channeled by truly exceptional leadership. Warboss Nazdreg Ug-Erdgrub emerged from the anarchic wastelands of the Eastern Fringe as one of the most tactically sophisticated Ork commanders in recent Imperial history, his campaigns against the expanding Tau Empire demonstrating a level of strategic thinking that surprised both human and alien observers. Standing nearly 3 meters tall even without his elaborate power armor, Nazdreg's massive frame bears the scars of hundreds of battles fought across multiple star systems, his cybernetic eye replacements and reinforced skull plates testament to his survival of conflicts that would have killed lesser Orks. His distinctive appearance includes ritual scarification that chronicles his major victories, while his armor incorporates trophies taken from defeated Tau commanders and captured battlesuits that serve both as decoration and functional equipment upgrades. The origins of Nazdreg's exceptional tactical abilities remain unclear, though Imperial intelligence suggests his enhanced cognitive capabilities resulted from extensive exposure to Tau technology and battle doctrine during his early campaigns in the Damocles Gulf region. Unlike typical Ork leaders who rely primarily on overwhelming force and aggressive assault tactics, Nazdreg demonstrated remarkable adaptability in developing countermeasures against Tau military innovations. His forces learned to neutralize Tau drone support networks, exploit weaknesses in fire warrior positioning, and even capture and reverse engineer advanced Tau equipment for use in subsequent operations. The first major campaign that brought Nazdreg to Imperial attention occurred during his systematic conquest of the Tau Sept world of Petch, where his forces employed sophisticated siege tactics that combined traditional Ork aggression with innovative approaches to urban warfare. Rather than launching straightforward assaults against the heavily fortified Tau positions, Nazdreg's forces conducted extensive reconnaissance operations that identified key infrastructure nodes and supply routes. His assault strategy involved simultaneous attacks against multiple targets designed to disrupt Tau command and control systems while preventing coordinated defensive responses. The Siege of Petch showcased Nazdreg's ability to coordinate complex multi-phase operations that maintained pressure on enemy forces while preserving his own casualties for critical objectives. His forces employed captured Tau equipment to jam enemy communications, used modified Ork vehicles to mimic Tau tactical signatures, and even deployed Gretchen infiltration teams trained to sabotage critical systems from within Tau defensive perimeters. The psychological impact of these unconventional tactics proved as devastating as their physical effects, with Tau commanders struggling to adapt to an enemy who refused to conform to their expectations of Ork behavior. The technological innovations that emerged from Nazdreg's workshops during the Petch campaign demonstrated his mechboy's exceptional ability to analyze and reproduce Tau technology using Ork engineering principles. Captured pulse rifles were modified to fire Ork ammunition while retaining their superior accuracy and range, while Tau drone chassis were converted into crude but effective Ork equivalents that provided fire support and reconnaissance capabilities. The most impressive achievement was the successful reverse engineering of Tau battlesuit technology, producing hybrid systems that combined Tau mobility and targeting systems with Ork durability and firepower. Nazdreg's naval capabilities proved equally sophisticated, with his fleet incorporating both captured Tau vessels and purpose-built Ork ships that demonstrated advanced understanding of void warfare principles. His flagship, a massive hybrid vessel constructed around the hull of a captured Tau Explorer-class starship, featured weapon systems that combined Ork destructive power with Tau precision targeting. The ship's command and control systems integrated Tau holographic displays with Ork mechanical interfaces, creating a hybrid technology that exceeded the capabilities of either parent system while remaining comprehensible to Ork operators. The expansion of Nasdrig's campaigns beyond the Damocles Gulf brought his forces into contact with Imperial Navy patrols, their encounters revealing the full extent of his tactical evolution and technological sophistication. His fleet employed coordinated attack patterns that demonstrated advanced understanding of three-dimensional combat, with his ships using Tau-derived stealth technology to achieve tactical surprise while maintaining the aggressive assault tactics that characterized Ork naval doctrine. The boarding actions that followed successful fleet engagements showcased hybrid assault techniques that combined Ork ferocity with Tau precision, creating devastating effectiveness against Imperial defenders unprepared for such sophisticated greenskin tactics. The intelligence gathered from these encounters led Imperial strategists to classify Nasdreg as a priority target whose continued operations posed significant threats to Imperial interests throughout the Eastern Fringe. His ability to adapt and learn from each encounter made him increasingly dangerous over time, while his success in integrating alien technology suggested potential for even greater innovations if his campaigns continued unchecked. The resources allocated to countering his operations included specialized Space Marine strike forces and Imperial Navy hunter-killer squadrons, specifically tasked with eliminating his key assets and disrupting his supply networks. Captain Badruk represents an entirely different aspect of Ork military potential. His career as the most successful freebooter leader in recent history, demonstrating the effectiveness of small-scale raiding operations conducted by highly mobile forces operating outside traditional clan structures. Standing slightly shorter than typical Ork knobs, but compensating with elaborate cybernetic enhancements and the finest equipment that stolen wealth can acquire, Badruk's appearance reflects his status as the premier pirate of the greenskin species. His ornate power armor incorporates precious metals and gems looted from countless raids, while his weapons collection includes exotic firearms acquired from across the galaxy through a combination of theft, trade, and violence. The freebooter lifestyle that Badruk epitomizes operates according to principles that emphasize individual profit and personal glory over the collective goals that drive traditional Ork military organizations. These mercenary warriors serve whoever pays them best, their loyalty extending only as far as their current contracts, while their methods focus on maximizing loot acquisition and minimizing their own casualties. This approach requires tactical sophistication and strategic planning that exceeds the capabilities of most Ork leaders, as successful freebooter operations depend on precise timing, accurate intelligence, and flawless execution rather than overwhelming force. Badruk's rise to prominence began during his service as a flash git in various mercenary companies, his exceptional marksmanship and tactical acumen quickly establishing him as a valuable asset to any force willing to meet his price. His personal weapon, a heavily modified snazgun incorporating targeting systems looted from Imperial Guard equipment and power sources salvaged from Space Marine weapons, became legendary among freebooter circles for its accuracy and destructive capability. The weapon's construction required years of modification and fine-tuning, with Badruk personally overseeing every aspect of its development to ensure optimal performance in the specific combat situations he preferred. The formation of Badruk's own freebooter company marked the beginning of his most successful period, as his leadership attracted veteran warriors from across the galaxy who sought to profit from his reputation and tactical expertise. His crew included specialists in void warfare, boarding actions, and rapid assault operations, their diverse skills allowing the company to undertake contracts that would be impossible for less versatile forces. The recruitment standards for Badruk's company exceeded those of most Ork military units, with prospective members required to demonstrate not only combat prowess, but also the discipline and reliability necessary for complex operations requiring precise coordination. The most famous exploit in Badruk's career occurred during his successful raid against the Imperial Navy depot at Bacca, where his forces infiltrated one of the Imperium's most heavily defended naval facilities and escaped with a cargo of rare archaeotech weapons worth more than most planetary treasuries. The operation required months of planning and preparation, with Badruk's agents gathering intelligence about security procedures, patrol schedules, and defensive capabilities, while his technical specialists developed the specialized equipment necessary to breach the facility's sophisticated defenses. The raid itself lasted less than 6 hours, but its execution demonstrated tactical capabilities that rivaled those of the finest Imperial special forces. The success of the Bacca raid established Badruk's reputation throughout the galaxy, attracting contracts from clients ranging from rogue Imperial commanders to alien species seeking military assistance against their enemies. His company's services became so sought after that he could afford to be selective about which contracts to accept, choosing operations that offered the best combination of profit potential and personal challenge. This selectivity allowed him to avoid the high-casualty operations that destroyed lesser freebooter companies, while building a track record of success that commanded premium rates in the mercenary marketplace. Badruk's approach to void warfare incorporates lessons learned from encounters with multiple species and military traditions, creating a hybrid tactical doctrine that combines the best features of various combat philosophies. His ships employ stealth approaches derived from Eldar techniques, boarding tactics inspired by Space Marine assault methods, and fire support coordination that reflects Imperial Navy doctrine. The resulting combat effectiveness exceeds that of conventional Ork naval forces, while maintaining the aggressive spirit and innovative problem-solving that characterizes greenskin military culture. The technological sophistication of Badruk's equipment extends beyond his personal weapons to encompass the specialized gear employed by his entire company, with each warrior carrying equipment optimized for their specific role within the organization. The boarding gear used by his assault specialists incorporates cutting tools capable of breaching any known armor material, while their weapon systems feature targeting enhancements that improve accuracy during the chaotic conditions of ship-to-ship combat. The void suits worn by his crew provide superior protection and mobility compared to standard Ork equipment, their construction incorporating materials and technologies acquired through decades of successful raids. The organizational structure of Badruk's company reflects his understanding of the requirements for successful mercenary operations, with clear hierarchies and specialized roles that ensure optimal performance during complex missions. His lieutenants include veterans of multiple military traditions who bring diverse expertise to the company's operations, while his technical specialists maintain and upgrade the sophisticated equipment that gives his forces their tactical advantages. The logistics network that supports his operations spans multiple star systems, with hidden supply caches and friendly contacts providing the resources necessary to sustain extended campaigns far from traditional Ork territories. The beast represents perhaps the most terrifying example of what the Ork species can achieve when a truly exceptional specimen emerges to unite the scattered greenskin tribes under a single banner. During the 32nd millennium, this colossal warboss launched the most devastating assault on Imperial territory since the Horus Heresy, his forces coming closer to conquering Terra itself than any enemy before or since. Standing nearly 6 meters tall and possessing intellectual capabilities that approached those of the ancient Krork, the beast demonstrated that the genetic potential for true greatness still existed within the degraded Ork genome when properly expressed through exceptional individuals. The origins of the beast remain one of the great mysteries of Imperial history, with no reliable records documenting his emergence or early campaigns. The first confirmed reports of his activities appeared in Imperial intelligence files only decades before his forces reached the Sol system, suggesting either an exceptionally rapid rise to power or a level of operational security that prevented earlier detection. The speed with which he assembled his massive WA forces indicated either unprecedented organizational abilities or access to resources and technologies that exceeded those available to typical Ork leaders. The military machine that the beast assembled represented the largest Ork force in recorded history, with conservative estimates suggesting that his Wa included hundreds of millions of warriors supported by war machines that demonstrated technological sophistication approaching that of the ancient Krork. The most impressive achievements of his engineering corps were the massive attack moons, artificial planetoids equipped with weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. These colossal constructs required resources and coordination that should have been beyond the reach of any Ork leader, their successful construction demonstrating capabilities that terrified Imperial observers who understood the implications of such technological achievements. The attack moons themselves defied conventional understanding of Ork engineering capabilities, their construction incorporating advanced gravitational manipulation systems and energy weapons that exceeded anything in the contemporary Imperial arsenal. Each moon measured several hundred kilometers in diameter and bristled with weapon batteries capable of engaging targets at interplanetary ranges, while their propulsion systems allowed them to achieve velocities that should have been impossible for objects of such massive size. The power requirements for operating these weapons suggested fusion technology that approached the sophistication of Dark Age of technology systems. The strategic doctrine employed by the Beast's forces demonstrated tactical thinking that exceeded anything previously observed from Ork commanders, with coordinated campaigns spanning multiple sectors and sophisticated logistics networks that sustained operations across vast distances. His forces employed combined arms tactics that integrated ground assaults with orbital bombardments, while his naval commanders demonstrated advanced understanding of fleet engagement principles that allowed them to achieve tactical victories against Imperial Navy squadrons despite facing technologically superior opponents. The coordination required to execute such complex operations suggested command and control capabilities that rivaled those of the most sophisticated human military organizations. The Imperial response to the Beast's invasion was hampered by complacency and political divisions that had weakened humanity's military capabilities during the long peace following the Horus Heresy. The Space Marine chapters had been reduced to 1,000 warriors, each following the Codex Astartes reforms, their numbers proving insufficient to counter a threat of this magnitude without massive support from other Imperial forces. The Imperial Guard regiments available for planetary defense lacked the training and equipment necessary to engage Ork forces operating with such technological sophistication and tactical coordination. The Siege of Terra represented the climactic phase of the War of the Beast, with Ork forces actually establishing beachheads on humanity's homeworld for the first time in recorded history. The psychological impact of greenskin warriors fighting within sight of the Imperial Palace sent shockwaves throughout the Imperium, demonstrating that even the most sacred and heavily defended worlds were vulnerable to sufficiently determined and well-equipped enemies. The defense of Terra required the mobilization of every available Imperial asset, from the elite Adeptus Custodes to hastily recruited PDF units, in a desperate effort to prevent the fall of humanity's capital. The resolution of the crisis came through a combination of Imperial heroism and strategic assassination, with a small force of Space Marines managing to infiltrate the Beast's command center and eliminate the massive warlord in personal combat. The death of their supreme leader caused the immediate collapse of the Wa forces, though the process of eliminating the remaining Ork strongholds required decades of continuous military operations across multiple sectors. The war's aftermath led to comprehensive reforms in Imperial military organization, including the creation of the Death Watch and significant increases in Space Marine recruitment quotas to prevent similar threats from achieving such devastating success. Mad Doc Grotznik occupies a unique position within Ork society as the most infamous painboy in recent history, his surgical innovations and experimental procedures advancing greenskin medical knowledge, while simultaneously creating some of the most terrifying specimens ever to emerge from orc operating theaters. Standing slightly shorter than typical knobs, but compensating with an elaborate collection of surgical implements and cybernetic enhancements, Grotznik's appearance reflects his obsession with biological modification and mechanical augmentation. His multiple mechanical arms allow him to perform complex surgical procedures with unprecedented precision, while his enhanced sensory organs provide the detailed anatomical knowledge necessary for his experimental work. Grotznik's rise to prominence began during his early career as a conventional pain boy, his exceptional surgical skills and innovative techniques quickly establishing him as one of the most sought-after medical practitioners in his region. His willingness to experiment with radical procedures and unconventional treatments attracted patients who had been written off by other pain boys, while his success rate with complex operations exceeded that of more conservative practitioners. The reputation he built during this period provided the foundation for his later career as the galaxy's most notorious orc surgeon. The surgical innovations that made Grotznik famous throughout orc society include advanced cybernetic integration techniques that allow organic and mechanical systems to function together with unprecedented efficiency. His procedures for installing power claw replacements result in limbs that provide superior strength and durability compared to original biological appendages, while his cranial modification techniques can enhance cognitive capabilities and psychic sensitivity in suitable subjects. The most famous example of his work remains the extensive modifications he performed on Gaz-Kul Mag Uruk-Thraka, transforming a promising but injured warboss into the most dangerous orc leader in contemporary galactic history. The experimental procedures that Grotznik conducts in his mobile surgical facility push the boundaries of what is possible with orc medical technology, combining salvaged Imperial equipment with innovative techniques that achieve results through methods that would horrify trained physicians. His operating theater includes advanced life support systems, sophisticated monitoring equipment, and an extensive collection of surgical tools that range from simple scalpels to complex cybernetic installation devices. The facility itself operates as a mobile laboratory that can be transported aboard various spacecraft, allowing Grotznik to conduct his research while remaining mobile enough to avoid enemies seeking to eliminate him. Wazdaka Gutsmek represents the ultimate expression of the Evil Sunz clan's obsession with speed and mechanical innovation. His career as the galaxy's premier speed freak, demonstrating the heights that orc engineering can achieve when focused on a single overwhelming passion. Standing nearly 3 meters tall and bearing extensive cybernetic modifications that enhance his reflexes and coordination, Wazdaka's appearance reflects his total dedication to the pursuit of ever greater velocity. His custom power armor incorporates multiple targeting systems and communication devices that allow him to coordinate high-speed operations while maintaining situational awareness during complex maneuvers. The legendary bike that serves as Wazdaka's primary mount represents the pinnacle of orc mechanical engineering, its construction incorporating the finest materials and most advanced technologies available to greenskin workshops. The vehicle's massive engine produces power levels that should be impossible for a machine of its size, while its reinforced chassis and suspension systems allow it to maintain stability at velocities that would destroy conventional vehicles. The weapon systems mounted on the bike include rapid-fire guns optimized for engaging targets while maintaining maximum speed, their targeting systems compensating for the extreme conditions of high-velocity combat. Wazdaka's influence on orc mechanical development extends far beyond his personal equipment to encompass the innovations he has introduced throughout Evil Sunz society and beyond. His workshops produce modified engines, enhanced suspension systems, and aerodynamic improvements that have been adopted by speed freaks across the galaxy, while his tactical innovations in high-speed warfare have influenced military doctrine throughout the orc species. The racing competitions he organizes serve both as entertainment and as testing grounds for new technologies, with successful innovations quickly spreading throughout the broader orc community. The campaigns led by Wazdaka demonstrate the tactical potential of highly mobile forces operating according to principles that emphasize speed and maneuverability over traditional Ork preferences for direct assault. His forces specialize in rapid strikes against isolated targets, their superior mobility allowing them to achieve local superiority before enemy reinforcements can respond effectively. The coordination required to execute such operations demands exceptional communication systems and tactical flexibility, capabilities that Wazdaka has developed through decades of experience in high-speed warfare. The closing years of the 41st millennium have witnessed an unprecedented escalation in Ork activity across the galaxy, with multiple massive WA forces simultaneously threatening Imperial space on a scale not seen since the War of the Beast. The Great Rift's violent birth has fundamentally altered the strategic landscape, creating new opportunities for greenskin expansion, while simultaneously exposing Ork populations to chaos corruption in ways that have produced disturbing mutations within their species. These developments have forced Imperial military planners to reassess their long-standing assumptions about Ork capabilities and behavior patterns, as traditional containment strategies prove inadequate against the enhanced threats emerging from this new galactic reality. Gazkul continues to represent the single greatest Ork threat to Imperial stability, with the profit of Gork and Mork's forces having grown to encompass tens of millions of warriors spread across multiple sectors. His current campaign has evolved beyond simple territorial conquest to encompass a galaxy-spanning religious crusade that attracts followers from previously unaffiliated Ork populations throughout the eastern fringe and Segmentum Solar. Intelligence reports indicate that his forces now include sophisticated command structures capable of coordinating operations across interstellar distances, with subordinate warbosses maintaining tactical independence while adhering to strategic objectives established by Gazkul's inner circle of advisors. The technological sophistication of Gazkul's current forces exceeds anything previously documented in Imperial records, with his mechboys producing weapons and vehicles that incorporate design principles derived from multiple alien species encountered during his campaigns. Captured Tau battlesuit technology has been successfully integrated into Ork mega armor designs, creating hybrid systems that combine greenskin durability with advanced targeting and mobility systems. Similarly, salvaged Necron components have been incorporated into Ork energy weapons, producing devastating effects that approach the destructive capability of ancient Xenos technology while maintaining the crude reliability that characterizes greenskin engineering. The naval component of Gazkul's WA has achieved unprecedented coordination and effectiveness, with his fleet incorporating both purpose-built Ork vessels and captured Imperial ships that have been extensively modified according to greenskin preferences. The flagship of this armada, a massive space hulk designated by Imperial intelligence as Planet Killer, mounts weapons systems that rival those found on Gloriana-class battleships while maintaining the ramshackle appearance that conceals its true capabilities from casual observation. The vessel serves as both a mobile command center and a symbol of Gazkul's divine mandate, its presence in a star system typically preceding major assault operations by several months. The psychological impact of Gazkul's religious message has proven as dangerous as his military capabilities, with his proclamations about the coming Great Wa inspiring Ork uprisings on worlds that had been considered pacified for centuries. Dormant spore infestations that had remained inactive for decades are experiencing mass germination events triggered by the psychic resonance of his expanding Wa field, creating new threats that strain Imperial defensive resources already stretched thin by multiple simultaneous crises. The religious fervor surrounding his leadership has also attracted human cultists and alien mercenaries who view his success as evidence of divine favor, creating unusual multi-species alliances that complicate Imperial intelligence gathering and tactical planning. Wasnagrod emerged from the Charadan sector, as another major threat during the early years of the 41st millennium's final century, with this massive orc force demonstrating tactical innovations that caught Imperial defenders completely unprepared. The warboss leading this campaign possessed an intuitive understanding of siege warfare that allowed his forces to systematically reduce fortified positions using techniques that combined traditional orc aggression with sophisticated engineering approaches. His forces successfully besieged and captured the fortress world of Badlanding, a victory that provided them with advanced Imperial military equipment and established Snagrod's reputation as one of the most dangerous orc leaders in the galaxy. The Badlanding campaign showcased several disturbing developments in orc military capabilities, including the successful deployment of coordinated artillery barrages that demonstrated unprecedented accuracy and timing. Snagrod's forces employed captured Imperial Guard heavy weapons in massed batteries that provided sustained fire support for assault operations, their effectiveness enhanced by orc modifications that increased rate of fire at the expense of barrel life and accuracy. The siege also featured the first recorded use of orc tunnel networks that extended for kilometers beneath enemy fortifications, allowing assault forces to emerge directly within defensive perimeters while bypassing outer fortification lines entirely. The Space Marine response to Was Snagrod culminated in the Siege of the Crimson Fist's Fortress Monastery on Rin's world, where a catastrophic accident involving the chapter's ammunition reserves resulted in the near destruction of one of the Imperium's most storied chapters. The explosion that devastated the Fortress Monastery eliminated most of the chapter's battle brothers and destroyed the majority of their equipment reserves, leaving the survivors to conduct a desperate fighting withdrawal against overwhelming orc forces. The campaign demonstrated both the resilience of Space Marine training and the devastating potential of orc forces operating under competent leadership, with small groups of Crimson Fists conducting guerrilla operations that inflicted casualties far exceeding their own numbers. The eventual Imperial victory on Rin's world came at enormous cost, requiring the deployment of multiple Space Marine chapters and Imperial Guard regiments to eliminate Snagrod's forces and restore Imperial control. The campaign's aftermath revealed the extent of orc technological advancement, with captured equipment including sophisticated communication systems and coordination protocols that approached the effectiveness of Imperial military networks. The intelligence gathered from these sources provided valuable insights into current orc capabilities, while raising disturbing questions about the potential for future technological developments. Wa-Tuska represents a unique phenomenon within contemporary orc military activity, as this force has achieved the remarkable feat of establishing permanent operations within the Eye of Terror itself. Tuska the Demon Killer earned his epithet through his obsession with hunting and killing chaos demons, his forces specializing in combat techniques specifically designed to counter the supernatural abilities and resistances of warp entities. The technological innovations developed by his mechboys include weapons that incorporate blessed materials and psychic dampening fields, creating equipment that proves unusually effective against demonic opponents while maintaining the crude reliability that characterizes orc engineering. The invasion of the demon world of Khorne's Brass Citadel by Tuska's forces represents one of the most audacious military operations in recent galactic history, with orc warriors successfully establishing beachheads on a world that exists partially within the warp itself. The campaign required the development of specialized equipment and tactics designed to function in an environment where physical laws operate according to the whims of chaos entities rather than natural principles. Tuska's forces employed modified void suits that provide protection against psychic attacks, while their weapons incorporated materials that maintain their effectiveness against opponents that exist partially outside normal reality. The ongoing nature of this campaign has created a unique situation where orc forces engage in daily combat against unlimited numbers of chaos demons, their deaths and resurrections creating an eternal cycle of warfare that satisfies both the Ork desire for constant fighting and Khorne's hunger for bloodshed. Imperial theologians debate whether this arrangement represents a form of damnation or the ultimate expression of Ork nature, while military analysts study reports from the campaign to better understand both Ork capabilities and Chaos Demon tactics. The intelligence value of this ongoing conflict cannot be overstated, as it provides unprecedented insight into the combat capabilities and behavioral patterns of entities that typically remain beyond Imperial observation. The Great Rift's creation has exposed Ork populations throughout the galaxy to levels of chaos corruption previously unknown in greenskin society, producing mutations and behavioral changes that have alarmed Imperial xenobiologists studying the phenomenon. Traditional Ork resistance to chaos corruption has proven less absolute than previously believed, with prolonged exposure to warp energies producing physical and psychological changes that alter fundamental aspects of greenskin biology and behavior. These corrupted Orks, designated as Chaos Orks by Imperial classification systems, demonstrate enhanced aggression and unpredictability that exceeds even normal greenskin standards while retaining their species' natural resilience and combat effectiveness. The mutations observed in Chaos Ork populations include enhanced physical capabilities that approach those of Chaos Space Marines, with some specimens developing additional limbs, enhanced sensory organs, and natural weapons that supplement their traditional equipment. More disturbing are the psychological changes that accompany these physical alterations, including increased cunning and strategic thinking that makes corrupted Ork forces significantly more dangerous than their unaltered cousins. The tactical coordination displayed by these enhanced forces suggests that chaos corruption may actually improve Ork military capabilities rather than degrading them as it does with most other species. The technological implications of Chaos Ork emergence extend beyond simple physical enhancement to encompass the development of hybrid technologies that combine greenskin engineering with demonic influence. Weapons produced by corrupted mechboys demonstrate capabilities that exceed normal Ork technology, including energy weapons that channel warp energies and vehicles that operate according to principles that violate physical laws. The most disturbing examples include demon engines that incorporate living Ork components, creating hybrid entities that possess both mechanical reliability and supernatural capabilities. The spread of chaos corruption among Ork populations has created new strategic challenges for Imperial forces, as traditional anti-Ork tactics prove less effective against enhanced opponents who demonstrate unprecedented coordination and tactical sophistication. The psychic resistance that normally protects Imperial forces from chaos influence provides limited protection against Ork-generated WA fields that have been corrupted by warp energies, creating combat environments where Imperial troops face both physical and supernatural threats simultaneously. The development of countermeasures against these hybrid threats has become a priority for Imperial military research, though progress remains limited due to the difficulty of studying live specimens. The interaction between Ork forces and other Xeno species has intensified significantly during the current millennium, with multiple ongoing conflicts demonstrating the adaptability and tactical flexibility that characterizes greenskin military doctrine. The expansion of the Tau Empire into territories previously controlled by Ork populations has created a series of border conflicts that showcase both species' military capabilities while providing valuable intelligence about their respective strengths and weaknesses. These campaigns have revealed unexpected Ork adaptability to Tau tactics, with greenskin forces developing countermeasures against advanced Tau technology through a combination of captured equipment analysis and intuitive engineering solutions. The most significant Ork-Tau conflicts have occurred in the Damocles Gulf region, where Warboss Nazdreg's forces continue to pose major threats to Tau expansion efforts despite repeated attempts to eliminate his leadership. The technological innovations developed during these campaigns have spread throughout the broader Ork community, with mechboys across the galaxy incorporating Tau-derived improvements into their own designs. The hybrid weapons and vehicles produced through this technological exchange demonstrate capabilities that exceed either parent technology, creating new threats that require updated Imperial tactical doctrines to counter effectively. The ongoing conflict between Ork forces and Tyranid hive fleets represents one of the most destructive military confrontations in the current galaxy, with both species demonstrating remarkable adaptability in developing new tactics and biological modifications to counter their opponents' capabilities. The consumption of Ork biomass by Tyranid organisms has produced hybrid creatures that incorporate greenskin resilience and aggression into Tyranid biological templates, creating new bioforms that pose unprecedented threats to Imperial forces. Conversely, Ork exposure to Tyranid biotechnology has inspired pain-by innovations that incorporate biological modifications derived from captured Tyranid specimens. The scale of destruction produced by Ork-Tyranid conflicts often exceeds that of conventional warfare, with entire star systems becoming uninhabitable as both species deploy increasingly destructive weapons and tactics in their attempts to achieve victory. The environmental damage caused by these conflicts creates long-term strategic implications that affect Imperial planning across multiple sectors, as worlds that might otherwise serve as defensive positions or resource sources become permanently compromised by the biological and technological contamination left by these battles. The reawakening of Necron tomb worlds has created another major threat that Ork forces have proven surprisingly effective at countering, despite the vast technological superiority of the ancient Xenos race. The crude but effective nature of Ork technology appears to provide some protection against Necron weapons systems that are specifically designed to counter more sophisticated opponents, while the unpredictable nature of greenskin tactics creates tactical situations that Necron strategic protocols struggle to address effectively. Several documented cases exist of Ork forces successfully raiding Necron tomb complexes and escaping with advanced technology that their mechboys have successfully integrated into their own designs. The psychological impact of Necron encounters on Ork populations has proven less severe than with other species, as greenskin mental resilience and their fundamental inability to comprehend the true implications of Necron capabilities protect them from the despair and terror that typically accompany such confrontations. This resistance allows Ork forces to maintain combat effectiveness against Necron opponents even when facing overwhelming technological disadvantages, their persistence and adaptability eventually creating opportunities for tactical victories through sheer determination and innovative problem solving. The eternal nature of the Ork threat to Imperial civilization stems from fundamental aspects of greenskin biology and psychology that make them impossible to eliminate completely through conventional military means. The spore-based reproductive system ensures that Ork populations can regenerate from minimal surviving populations, while their genetic programming drives them toward constant warfare regardless of external circumstances or rational considerations. This combination of biological resilience and psychological compulsion creates a species that poses persistent threats to human civilization even when reduced to minimal numbers or isolated on remote worlds. The adaptability that characterizes Ork military doctrine allows them to remain competitive against technologically superior opponents through continuous innovation and the incorporation of captured enemy equipment into their own designs. This technological parasitism enables greenskin forces to benefit from the research and development efforts of other species, while avoiding the resource costs and time requirements associated with original innovation. The resulting hybrid technologies often exceed the capabilities of their parent systems, while maintaining the crude reliability that allows Ork forces to operate effectively under conditions that would disable more sophisticated equipment. The psychological warfare capabilities that Ork forces possess through their mere existence cannot be understated, as their reputation for brutality and their resistance to conventional deterrence create fear and uncertainty among Imperial populations, even when no immediate threat exists. The knowledge that dormant Ork spores might exist on any world creates persistent anxiety that affects civilian morale and resource allocation decisions, while the unpredictable nature of Ork military operations prevents effective long-term strategic planning in regions where greenskin activity has been detected. The religious and cultural significance of warfare within Ork society ensures that their species will continue to pose threats to galactic stability regardless of political or economic considerations that might influence other civilizations. The worship of Gork and Mork provides spiritual justification for constant aggression, while the social structures that govern greenskin communities reward military success and punish peaceful behavior. This cultural programming creates a species that cannot be negotiated with or deterred through conventional diplomatic means, requiring constant military vigilance and rapid response capabilities to prevent minor incidents from escalating into major threats. The current strategic situation facing the Imperium includes multiple simultaneous Ork threats that strain defensive resources while preventing the concentration of forces necessary to eliminate any single Wa completely. The coordination between different Ork forces, while limited by their natural tendency toward internal competition, has reached levels that suggest possible external influence or the emergence of exceptionally capable leadership that transcends traditional clan boundaries. The implications of this development for future Imperial security planning cannot be overstated, as coordinated Ork operations could potentially overwhelm defensive systems designed to counter individual Wa forces operating independently. As the 41st millennium draws toward its close, the Ork species stands as one of the most persistent and adaptable threats facing human civilization. Their combination of biological resilience, technological adaptability, and cultural dedication to warfare ensures that they will continue to plague the galaxy regardless of whatever other crises may emerge to threaten Imperial stability. The green tide that has swept across the stars for millions of years shows no signs of receding, and the continued evolution of Ork capabilities suggests that future threats may exceed even the devastating campaigns that have already shaped galactic history. In a universe filled with horrors beyond imagination, the simple, brutal effectiveness of the Ork war machine remains one of the most enduring and dangerous forces that humanity must face in its struggle for survival among the stars.